Hi, I'm Alice. I live in New York with my husband Roger. We have 2 kids. Our older daughter, Clara, is a lawyer, and our younger one is in college. I work as a teacher, and Roger has big dreams of starting his own business. He believes it will make good money, but he doesn't have enough to get started, so he does small jobs to save up. I don't mind because my job brings in a steady income, and I handle the household expenses without any trouble. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting in the living room. "The weather is nice today," Roger said. "Yes, it is. I'm excited to see Clara. She's been away for so long," I replied. "Me too. I've missed her." "How is your business idea going, dear?" I asked. "It's going well. I found an investor and things are looking promising," Roger said. "Oh, that's great. I wish I could help you more with money," I said. "It's okay. Your income keeps the household running. Don't worry about it. I know you're doing your best, and I appreciate everything you do," Roger reassured me. "That's not what I meant, dear. I'm proud of your ambition and I believe in your dreams. I just want us to succeed together," I said. Before I could say more, Clara's voice interrupted us. "Mom, Dad, I'm back." "Welcome home, Clara. We missed you so much," we both said. "I missed you both too. It's great to be back," Clara replied. Clara had just finished her law training. She's a sincere and kind girl. The next few days were full of joy and laughter. "Hey Mom, shall we go on a family trip? I'm starting work next month, and I want to spend time with you all before that," Clara suggested. She was right. We hadn't been on a family trip in years. I decided to fulfill her wish. "Oh sure, dear. It's been so long since we spent quality time together, and now that you're here, you don't have to worry about the expenses," I said. "Mom, I'll contribute too," Clara offered. I felt so proud of my daughter. We've raised our kids well, but I had some savings and wanted to pay for the trip myself. "Oh, it's okay. I have some savings and a credit card. We'll still have a good time," I said. "Great, Mom. I'll plan the whole trip," Clara said excitedly. The next day, Clara came to me. "Hey Mom, I need your credit card to book the flight." "Here you go," I said, handing her the card. "Thank you, Mom. I'll be back in a while," she said and went to book the tickets. But after a few minutes, she came out of her room looking worried. "Mom," Clara called. "Yes, dear?" "I can't book the tickets. It says your card has been blocked. I booked the tickets with my card, but I'm wondering what happened to yours." "What? How is that possible?" I asked, surprised. I checked, and it turned out that a big monthly payment was pending. "What? I didn't take any loan recently, and all the previous dues have been paid off," I said, confused. "Then it might be a mistake by the bank. I'll call them and check," Clara said. I started to worry. I've always been careful about money and paid all my dues on time. I hoped it was just a mistake, but I tried to stay calm. Clara was on a call with the bank manager for a long time. I waited anxiously for her to finish. "Hey, is everything okay?" "What did they say?" I asked when she finally came out. "Mom, they told me you took a big loan this year and haven't paid any installments. That's why your card has been blocked. We can't use it until you pay the due amount," Clara explained. "What? I didn't take any loans. Are you sure, Mom? Maybe you don't remember. The amount is huge. How much is it?" $75,000, Clara replied. "What? How could I forget such a large amount? I've never taken on a debt this big." "It's okay, Mom. They said they would email the documents. We'll see what we can do," Clara said, trying to calm me down. "Oh God, what is this new problem?" "Don't worry, Mom. Where's Dad?" "I'll let him know. He went on a business trip for a week. It's an important meeting with a new investor," I said. "No worries. I'll handle it," Clara reassured me. But I was still really worried about the loan situation. I tried really hard to remember the details, but I couldn't recall anything. I've always been careful with my money since I've had to manage everything on my own, and the idea of taking out a big loan scares me. I even wondered if this could be a scam, which made me feel really uneasy. While on the business trip, Thomas and Roger had a serious conversation about money. "I don't understand why your wife didn't invest in your business all these years if she wanted to support you. And why did she transfer money to my account instead of doing it directly?" Thomas asked. "Honestly, I don't know the reasons behind her actions," Roger replied. "Are you sure about that? I heard she's a teacher, so how did she suddenly come up with such a large amount of money?" It's better if you don't say a word to her, or you'll have to deal with the consequences, Thomas said. Roger then showed some photos to Thomas, who got scared and stayed quiet. That's not the main issue right now. Let's focus on my business idea. Did you like it? Roger asked. I have to admit, your idea is very interesting, but I want to remind you that there's always a risk in any business venture. Have you thought about the potential risks and challenges? Thomas asked. I understand there are risks, but I firmly believe in the success of my idea, Roger replied. It's good to have confidence, but you should be prepared. A well-thought-out plan and risk management are crucial for any business to succeed, Thomas advised. Thank you, Thomas. Let's go to the meeting now, Roger said. Roger nailed the meeting with his convincing skills and got the deal. They made a huge profit. Back at home, Clara came out after analyzing the details sent by the bank. Mom, the bank has emailed your details. It looks like the person who took the loan used all your documents. The loan is in your name, and your signature is on the papers too, Clara explained. Signature? I never signed any such document. You know me, Clara. I always read everything before signing, I said, shocked. I know, Mom. It's a fraud, and I'll find out who did this to you. But first, we need to file a police report, Clara said. What about my blocked cards and the payments due on this debt? I asked, worried. It's okay, Mom. I spoke with the bank manager. He said he'd report the fraud and could pause the payments until the culprit is found. Clara reassured me. I don't know how this happened. I feel terrible. You just wanted a trip, and I couldn't even give you that, I said, feeling guilty. It's okay, Mom. I promise I'll find out who did this before our trip, Clara said determinedly. I felt proud of my daughter at that moment, but I was also worried that she might get into trouble. I didn't want to discourage her, so I decided to support her fully. First, give me the documents, Mom. I'll go to the bank and verify them, Clara said. I handed her the documents. When Clara came back, she said the documents were real, but the signature wasn't mine. Someone had copied my signature and taken out a loan in my name. It must be someone close, Mom. Someone who has access to your documents and has seen your signature. Do you suspect anyone? Clara asked. I don't know, dear. My documents are always kept safe in our bedroom, and I never gave the key to anyone. My signature is something only my colleagues at school and family know, but none of them would do this, I replied. Where do you keep the keys, Mom? Clara asked. In my bedroom. Only your dad and I know where they are, I said. Could it be Dad, Roger? Clara asked hesitantly. No, what are you saying? He's your dad, I exclaimed. I know. But everything is pointing to him. Did you know, Mom? Dad can mimic your signature, Clara said. I used to take your signature on my report card so you wouldn't scold me for my low grades. What? I said it shocked. Yes, Dad can mimic your signature exactly, Clara admitted. Tears started rolling down my cheeks. But we still can't be sure of anything, Mom. The loan money was transferred to someone else's account. Do you know anyone named Thomas? Clara asked. You mean Thomas Jones? Yes, I've seen that name on your dad's phone. Maybe he's one of his friends. What's going on here? I need to talk to Roger, I said, feeling a wave of confusion. Yes, we should clarify this. He might have an explanation, Clara agreed. I called Roger, but he was unreachable. I couldn't believe he might have done this to me. If there was an emergency, he should have told me. My mind was full of questions, and I couldn't think straight. Mom, I think we should wait until Dad comes back, Clara suggested. Okay, I said, though the next 2 days were incredibly hard. Roger's phone remained unreachable, and I couldn't stop worrying. I was anxiously waiting for him to return home. Finally, on the day he was supposed to come back, the doorbell rang. Thinking it was him, I rushed to open the door, but it was just a courier. Disappointed, I signed the receipt and brought the package inside. What is it, Mom? Clara asked. I don't know, maybe some school documents. I'll check later, I replied. Shall I open it? Clara offered. Yes, go ahead, I said. As soon as Clara opened the package, it fell from her hands, and she looked shocked. Mom, she exclaimed. Seeing her panic, I got scared too and rushed over. She was pointing at the envelope on the floor. I picked it up, opened it, and saw some photos. The moment I saw them, my head started spinning. I sat down and looked at them again. The photos showed me hugging my friend Jackson, who works with me at school. There were also photos of us sitting in a cafe, feeding each other and even kissing. I couldn't believe it. I had never done such a thing. I'd always loved Roger. How was this possible? Clara, this isn't possible. I mean, the face and hair are mine, but I've never done this. Jackson has a family, and I would never cheat on your dad, I said, desperately trying to make sense of it. I know, Mom. It's hard for me to believe too, but the love letters in there are in your handwriting. It doesn't seem right, Clara said, confused. Just then, Roger arrived home. Dad, Clara said, greeting him. Why do you look so? By the way, I've got great news. We made a tremendous profit on this deal, Roger announced, not noticing the tension in the room. Oh, why is it so hot in here? What's going on? What's in your hand, Alice? Before I could stop him, Roger took the envelope from me. He opened it and stared at the photos. What is this? Who is this man, Alice? Answer me. Roger demanded angrily. It's my colleague, Jackson, I explained, trembling. Oh, wow. Is this what you do at school? Roger shouted. Dad, at least listen to her. The photos are edited. Don't you trust Mom? You know how much she loves you, Clara pleaded. No, she doesn't love me. That's why she's so calm and hasn't asked you about the $75,000 debt I took in her name, Roger retorted. What? You took out that loan? I asked in shock. Oh, so you found out, Alice? Well, since we're on the subject, listen to this. I want a divorce. You've cheated on me, and I'm going to file a case against you in court, Roger declared. Stop it, Dad. I never thought I'd have to say this to you, but I have no other choice. Mom never cheated on you. You've created these fake proofs to sabotage her. Clara shouted, standing up to her father. Oh, I never thought you'd become this smart. You figured it out, but you don't have any proof. Listen carefully. If you still want to call me Dad, you'll do what I say, Roger threatened. No, Dad. I became a lawyer to fight for the truth and punish liars. I'm going to fight for Mom, Clara replied, determined. Roger couldn't believe what Clara was saying. He stared at her angrily. You're just a kid. You don't have any proof. If you want to fight for your mom, then get out of this house now, Roger shouted. Okay, Dad, I'll leave, but you'll realize your mistakes soon. Come on, Mom, let's go to my place, Clara said. I couldn't believe this was my husband, the man I had loved all my life. How could he do this to me? And most importantly, why? I had always supported him, and now he was repaying me like this. I couldn't handle the trauma. Clara took me to her home. Mom, rest for a while. Don't think too much. I'll make everything right, Clara said. I closed my eyes, and memories of Roger and me falling in love, getting married, raising our kids, and our life together flashed before my eyes. How could he forget everything? Why would he do this to me? I fell asleep, exhausted and heartbroken. Meanwhile, Clara was working on the case. She had learned in law school to always stand up for the truth, no matter what. She was determined to uncover the truth. Clara emailed the photos to her friend, who was an editor, to confirm that they were edited. Then she started investigating Thomas Jones. Clara got his contact details from the bank and called him. Hello, Thomas? Hello, who is this? Thomas answered. I'm Clara, Roger's daughter, the one in whose business you've invested money. Clara introduced herself. I don't know any Roger, Thomas said, sounding confused. Stop lying. I have all the proof of your emails and chats. This call is being recorded, so you better tell the truth, Clara warned. Thomas sighed. Roger is blackmailing me, Clara. I'm sorry. He said he would ruin my marriage if I didn't cooperate. You don't have to worry. He can't do anything. But if you don't speak the truth, I'll have to file a complaint against you as well, Clara replied firmly. No, please don't. I'm sorry, I'll cooperate. What do you want to know? Thomas asked, his voice shaky. How much did you invest in my dad's business? Clara questioned. Clara, I didn't invest anything. Your mom did, Thomas confessed. Mom, do you know this? Clara asked, turning to me. Yes, Alice, right? You transferred $75,000 to me and told me to invest in Roger's business, Thomas said. What? When? I exclaimed, shocked. Clara, I have no idea what he's talking about. I never transferred money to him or texted him. It's okay, Mom. I think I've got an idea, Clara reassured me. She then told Thomas, okay, thank you for cooperating. This is enough information. We realized Roger had deceived everyone. Clara then decided to check with Jackson. She knew him well and trusted that he wouldn't do anything wrong, but she needed proof. Clara went to Jackson's house and explained everything. Jackson was shocked when he saw the photos. In reality, the photos were of Jackson and his wife. Roger had edited my face in place of Jackson's wife. Clara collected the original photos from Jackson as evidence. A few days later, another courier arrived. "Mom, here's another package for you," Clara said. "Oh God, what now?" I muttered, feeling exhausted. "Relax, Mom. Just open it," Clara encouraged me. I opened the package and was shocked once again. It was divorce papers. Roger had sent me divorce papers, accusing me of cheating on him. "What? This is too much now, Mom. You need to fight this," Clara insisted. "Dear, he doesn't love me anymore. Maybe it's better if we get separated. But I won't accept these false accusations. We'll go to court and prove him wrong," I decided. Clara was right, there was no love left, but I had to protect my self-respect. So we appealed to the court. On the day of the trial, Clara and I went to the family court. Roger stood in front of me, and I looked into his eyes, seeing no feelings for me. How could a person change so suddenly? What did I do wrong in our marriage? The trial started, and Roger accused me of cheating on him with Jackson and demanded a divorce. Clara spoke confidently, "Your Honor, the accusations against my client are baseless. We have evidence to prove this. The photos in question were manipulated, and here are the original photos." Clara's editor friend had confirmed the photos were edited, and Clara presented the original one.
My in-laws were drunk at the wedding, but they didn't care even though people were whispering about them. They started yelling at me. "It's too late now that you're married, but if you want to be part of this family, you need to show us you have enough money," they said. "Yes, your dad is right, so make sure to give us $1,000 a month as a new bonus," they added. I was shocked by their demands. I couldn't believe they would say such things at my wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My dad took the microphone from them. "Enough is enough. Don't you realize you're embarrassing yourselves?" he said. "My name is Linda. I am a 30-year-old office worker. I am currently dating Larry, who is 32 years old. I met him through a friend who was worried about me being single, so she introduced us. After dating for a year, Larry proposed, and now we are about to get married. I lost my mother when I was very young, and my father raised me on his own. He worked very hard to take care of me. I didn't have many worries growing up, but losing my mom, who I loved so much, deeply hurt me. Because of this, I was very careful with my emotions. That's why I hadn't dated anyone seriously since my school days. I even thought it would be okay if I stayed single forever. Then I met Larry. At first, I didn't feel any romantic feelings for him, even though he asked me out many times. Larry really cared about me and was always a gentleman. Slowly, I began to open my heart to him, and we started dating. He kept caring for me, and I felt very happy. He became very special to me, and I started thinking I wanted to be with him forever. Then he proposed, and we decided to get married. Larry understood everything about me and was always kind to me no matter what. "Don't worry. If you're ever feeling unsure about something, I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Linda. You can count on me," he would say. His words moved me. He promised to make me happy for the rest of my life. Just being with him warmed my heart. If he cared that much for me, I thought I should do the same for him. When I told my father that we decided to get married, he was so happy that he cried. "Wow, Linda, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you," he said. "Oh, Dad, you're being dramatic," I joked. "Wow, I hadn't heard anything like that from you until now. I was always worried that you might never get married," he replied. "Oh, really? I had no idea you were worried about that," I said. "Well, every father worries about his daughter, you know. Anyway, congratulations," he said. "Thanks, Dad," I replied. I was so happy to be congratulated by my dad, who had raised me by himself. I thought I would probably cry at the wedding, and my dad would probably cry even more since he was already crying now. With that, Larry and I started preparing for our wedding. We were both busy with our jobs, so our days were very hectic. We worked during the weekdays and made wedding preparations over the weekends. There was no time to rest. Our calendars were always full. On a rare day off, we were supposed to visit Larry's parents' house. I was going to meet Larry's parents for the first time. Larry had come over to meet my father right after he proposed to me. Originally, I had planned to visit Larry's parents right after that to introduce myself. But they were very busy, and our schedules never matched. Finally, some time passed, and we managed to arrange a visit. As we arrived at his parents' house, I suddenly felt nervous. "Don't worry, my parents are very kind," Larry reassured me. His words made me feel a bit better, and I rang the doorbell. It was his mother who opened the door. "Mom, I'm home," Larry said. "Welcome home, Larry. It's so good of you to come," his mother replied warmly. As she talked with her son, I greeted her as politely as I could. "Nice to meet you. My name is Linda, and I'm Larry's fiancée." "I see, so you're Linda," she said. Her voice was much lower than when she spoke to Larry, and her smile vanished. She looked me up and down as if judging me. Then she led us to the living room, where her cold attitude didn't change. "Linda, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Larry is our treasure and our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him?" she asked, more like an interrogation. I was taken aback by her question. I hadn't expected such a cold attitude from my future mother-in-law and was at a loss for words. "You're going to join our family, you know. Are you ready for that?" she continued. True, marrying Larry meant joining his family. But it's not like Larry's family were the Kennedys or some well-known high society family. It's not like I was marrying into a royal family. Why was I being asked to make such a commitment? Besides, I wasn't even going to live with them. I don't like being pressured with questions like these. As I was trying to figure out how to respond, his mother seemed impatient with my slow reply and scolded me harshly. "When I ask you a question, answer me right away. You're so rude," she snapped. "I'm asking if you're ready for this," she continued, raising her voice. Despite feeling overwhelmed, I managed to say, "I hope that Larry and I will support each other in our marriage." When I said that, his mother was not convinced. What a naive thing to say. You aren't just going to support each other. You are supposed to support Larry. It's your job as a wife to support your husband. You don't even understand the basics, she criticized. Then Larry's father, who was sitting next to her, intervened. "Honey, calm down." "Sorry about that, Linda. You must have been startled by my wife's words," he said, trying to ease the tension. "It's all right," I replied, trying to remain calm. His mother is very protective of her only son. Maybe she was just nervous and spoke without thinking. Just then, Larry's brother walked in. He spoke in a quiet, calm, and gentle tone. He seemed like a kind man, which gave me a moment of relief, but that relief was short-lived. With a smile on his face, he said the most unexpected thing. "What my wife says is actually justified. What concerns me the most is that you come from a single-parent family." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, confused. "Well, being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image. We can't be too happy to have such a person become the wife of our only son, can we?" he explained. "Hold on a minute," I said, unable to let this comment slide. "What is wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked very hard to raise me by himself. I am very thankful for my upbringing, and I am proud of my father. Being raised by a single parent doesn't make me any less valuable." But they still argued. Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, do housework, and such. I responded, "I did a lot of housework to help my father. I can also cook pretty well, so please don't say that." Despite my response, Larry's mother ignored what I said and finally stated, "I will allow you to marry Larry, but in exchange, you must promise to devote everything to us because we are Larry's parents. Can you promise me that?" I was shocked. "What? Since you came here to ask for our permission to marry our son, you do know what your duties are, don't you?" Before I could say more, he continued the conversation. I found that my in-laws had completely taken over the conversation, giving me little chance to respond. That night, as I thought more about the marriage, I decided to share my feelings with Larry. "Say, Larry, do your parents always talk to people like that?" "What about it?" Larry seemed unfazed. I was surprised that Larry didn't see anything wrong with what his parents had said to me. "Well, I mean the way your parents spoke to me and what they said," I tried to explain. "Oh really? Well, they were just talking about whether you were ready for this marriage. I get that your parents are worried about their son's marriage, but I feel like what your parents were saying was a bit too much." "Really? Why is that?" My parents didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they've given us permission to get married, so don't worry about it. That's true, but I felt uneasy that Larry seemed to side with his parents more than with me. That was very troubling. I guess he realized I was feeling unsure because he gave me a hug. Linda, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married, he said. He spoke as if he didn't fully support me. It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good of a couple as they are. That's why they were a bit harsh. Oh, really? I replied, like he said maybe his parents have high expectations for us. But even if that's the case, I don't think it's right for them to belittle me because I was raised by my father. I don't think people who say such things make a good couple. We are the ones getting married, and we should be the focus, not their approval or disapproval. With that perspective, although I was still a bit upset, I decided not to dwell too much on his parents' opinions. Then the day of the wedding arrived. We had many guests, including our relatives, friends, colleagues, and bosses. I walked down the aisle with my father, who had raised me all my life. Larry and I exchanged our vows and rings. We were met with applause, and for the first time, I truly realized that I was getting married to Larry. I felt a happiness I had never felt before. As we walked into the reception hall, we made our way through the crowd, greeted by videos of us as part of the entertainment. It was a joyful time. I chatted with friends I hadn't seen in a while, and many people congratulated us. Despite my earlier worries about his parents, I was glad I had decided to marry Larry. I was glad we decided to have a memorable day. After the ceremony, we planned to officially register our marriage, and Larry and I would become husband and wife. I cherished every moment and felt so happy. Time flew by, and soon it was time for the final part of the event. The bridegroom and both sets of parents lined up to greet the guests. But I started to feel uneasy because of Larry's parents. We were all supposed to be standing in line, but his parents were wobbly on their feet. If you looked closely, you could see that their faces were bright red. They had drunk too much. Some relatives asked if they were okay. My in-laws were clearly drunk. But we had to wrap up the ceremony and get it over with. The moderator handed the microphone to me and Larry. Suddenly, Larry's mother snatched my hand away from him and yelled at me like a professional wrestler in the middle of a challenge. Listen to me, Linda. After this wedding, you are going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you really hard. The guests started whispering to each other, and some even thought it was a joke and laughed. Then Larry's father grabbed the microphone. Linda, don't you feel embarrassed to wear a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all, dear. You should tell her the truth, his mother chimed in. As expected, the whispers among the guests changed in tone. I looked at Larry, hoping he would stop his father's rude comments, but Larry said he couldn't do that and that his parents weren't doing anything wrong. It became clear he would never protect me from his parents in the future. That was the moment I realized it. I was certain of it even as the hall buzzed around us. My in-laws were drunk and continued to insult me. Well, you're already married, but if you're going to be part of this family, you need to prove that you have enough money, they said. Yes, that's right, they continued. After you register your marriage at the city hall, you should give us a few thousand a month and your entire bonus. I was shocked by their words. I never thought they would say such things at our wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My father took the microphone from them. Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves? He said, though still showing some respect. His parents glared at my father. Why are you interrupting us while we're talking? I knew this woman's father was no good. Single parents are never any good, they said. How dare they insult my father? I thought. My father, keeping his cool, replied, You people are even worse than I imagined. You even refuse to meet me because I am a single father. I never thought that someone like you would work for President Scott. President Scott is such a respectable person. I assumed his employees would be decent as well. At that, my father-in-law's face turned very serious. How do you know President Scott? He's a business partner of my company and, more importantly, an old friend of mine, my father explained. And speaking of single parents, President Scott was raised by his mother alone. So you just insulted the president of the company you work for. Seeing my in-laws' faces fall at my father's words, I realized they finally understood the mess they had gotten themselves into. I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this. my in-law pleaded, suddenly falling to his knees. Just moments before, he had acted like he was in charge, but now he looked defeated. I could hear laughter from the guests. Some even pulled out their cell phones to record the scene. "No matter how much you apologize, you can't take back your words," my dad said. He walked over to me and asked if I wanted to go home with him. I said yes and took the microphone from Larry's hand. "Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage," I announced to Larry and his parents and to everyone who attended. "I will make sure to return the money you gave us for this occasion." Then I left the reception hall with my dad. I caught a glimpse of Larry and his parents looking dismayed, and soon after, his relatives rushed over with worried expressions on their faces. The place must have been in complete chaos. As I returned their money, I apologized to the guests. They all expressed sympathy for me and praised me and my dad for our actions, saying it was good that we weren't taken advantage of by such terrible people. Later, Larry's coworkers who had attended the reception must have spread the word about what happened at his company. Larry became known for having such unreasonable parents and was criticized for having a weak character. His embarrassment was so great that he resigned voluntarily. Of course, the president of my father-in-law's company found out about the incident. Larry's father was demoted and sent to an insignificant division of the company, transferred to a remote office in the countryside. I heard that Larry's family has been ostracized by all his relatives because of what happened at the wedding. While it's unfortunate, it really was their own doing, and sometimes things like that just can't be avoided. In the meantime, I've been using this opportunity to strengthen my relationship with my dad. We've been spending more quality time together, and it's helped me appreciate all he's done for me even more. One day, he sat me down for a serious talk. "Linda, are you interested in running the business?" he asked, looking at me with a mixture of hope and seriousness. "Do you mean?" I started, a bit unsure where he was heading with this. "Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" he suggested. It was a big step, and he seemed to believe I was ready to take it on. "I'll do my best," I promised him, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I decided then to focus on stepping up my game at work rather than getting entangled in romantic relationships for now. I wanted to prove to myself and to my dad that I could excel and perhaps one day be a great leader like him. Currently, I am deeply involved in learning everything I can at my dad's company. The work is challenging but fulfilling, and I'm determined to make the most of this opportunity. Reflecting on the wedding fiasco, it's clear that Larry's in-laws were quite unreasonable, turning what should have been a beautiful event into a spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage wasn't officially registered, I was spared from a legally binding mistake. Now, free from any marital ties and with no looming in-law issues, I can focus solely on my career aspirations. It's a relief to know that out of a chaotic situation came a clear path forward for me. I look forward to what the future holds and am excited about the potential of leading the company. I wish myself all the best and hope that anyone watching this story can take something valuable from it. Thank you for staying till the end. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this story, and I hope to see you in the next video. Hello, my name's Mabel and I'm 30 years old. Recently, I came into a large fortune and it revealed the ugly side of my husband. Today, I want to share my story and how I unintentionally got revenge on two people at once. Let me start by telling you a bit more about myself. I grew up away from my grandparents, but we were still very close. I remember that every few months they would visit us just to spend time with me. I was especially close to my grandmother. I was the apple of her eye, and she never ceased to spoil me. When my grandfather passed away when I was 17, I was devastated and my grandmother didn't take it well either. I loved her dearly, so when it was time for me to go to college, I chose to attend one in her state to be closer to her. It was in college that I met my ex-husband, Toby. We started dating during our junior year and had a pretty good relationship. Toby was everything I was looking for in a partner, which is why I continued the relationship even after we graduated. We got engaged a few months after graduating but decided to wait until we were in a stable financial situation to get married. In the meantime, since I had a better apartment, Toby moved in with me. While my relationship with Toby was great, I could not get along with his sister Julia. Julia didn't live in the same state as us because she moved with her husband when he got a better job. But she still doted on Toby excessively. She hated me from the moment we met, probably thinking I was stealing her baby brother from her. She was always rude and unaccommodating. The only reason I tolerated her visits was because she would bring over her daughter, Viola. Viola and I got along really well from the time she was a baby. She only seemed to like being with me, and I enjoyed it. Julia was glad to have some time to herself, but that didn't stop her from being mean to me. Toby never stood up for me because he loved his sister too much to hurt her feelings. Not wanting to cause a rift between them, I just shut up and dealt with it. About 3 years after we got engaged, Toby and I were doing well enough, so we decided to get married. It was an amazing day, and yes, I'll even say that now. Everything was going great until 4 years after we got married, when 2 major things happened. The first was that my grandmother passed away. I was heartbroken and honestly could not do much during that time. I inherited about $1 million in money and assets combined, but none of that mattered to me because my grandmother was gone. The second thing that happened was that Julia and her family moved back into town. Suddenly, Toby was rarely at home. He was almost always over at Julia's, and when he was home, Julia was often there too. The only thing keeping me sane was the time I spent with Viola. While I was still grieving the loss of my grandmother, Toby's absence became more apparent. I tried to talk to him about it, but he didn't seem to care until one day he came home directly after work, alone, a pretty rare occasion. "Hey sweetie, how was your day?" "It was pretty good. What about you?" "Oh, same old. I went to meet Julia, and we got to talking." "You seem to be visiting Julia a lot." "Yeah, we're really close. I miss her, and I guess I just feel better when I'm with her. When I'm around her anyways. Do you not want to know what we talked about?" "Yeah, sure. Tell me." "Well, I was telling her that we were planning on buying a house. I'm going to cut you off right there. I never agreed to that. Just listen to me. Julia asked me how I had the funds for it, and I told her all about your inheritance. She suggested that it would actually be a great investment for us to make." "And why is that?" "I mean, you have more than enough money to almost fully purchase a house. I really think that we should invest in it. We'll be well settled for the rest of our lives. But I want to invest my money in something better." "What's better than securing a house for ourselves?" "I can think of several better things that can at least be put to use for our future. I don't want to spend all my money on one thing." "It's like you're trying to tell me that your money is yours and not mine to begin with." "Well, it kind of is. I get to decide what I want to do with it, and you have no say in it. Look, you either invest your money in something for the both of us, or I'm leaving." "Where would you go? You're literally begging me to buy a house with my money for your future. If you choose to leave, that's your loss." "Oh, so you're okay with me leaving all because you want to keep your money to yourself?" "Don't try and act as if that's what I was saying, Toby. You're the one threatening to leave me if I don't spend on you. You're the one who brought it up." "Yes, because I thought you loved me and wanted to spend your future with me. Forgive me for looking out for us." "You're really bad at whatever you're trying to do here. I'm keeping my money, and I get to decide where and how I spend it." "Fine, but could you at least think about spending it on a house for us?" "Sure." I wasn't sure why Toby was being so adamant about buying the house, but something did not seem right to me, which is why I knew I had to stand my ground. Toby began to distance himself from me after that conversation. He started spending even more time at Julia's place. Julia stopped coming over except to drop Viola off when she needed me to babysit her. I tried to talk to Toby on multiple occasions and asked him what was wrong, but he always brushed me off and told me there was nothing wrong. Eventually, I gave up and figured that I'd just wait until Toby was ready to talk. However, things took a turn when one day Julia dropped Viola off at my place for me to babysit her. "Hey Viola, how's my favorite niece doing?" "I'm your only niece." "Still my favorite though." "I hope I'll always be your favorite." "Of course you will be. Anyways, what do you want to do today?" "I was thinking we could get our nails done and then get some ice cream." "Yay, can I paint my nails pink?" "Of course you can." "And can I get strawberry ice cream?" "Why can't you? We'll get you everything you want. I only have one niece, and if I don't spoil her, would I really be her aunt?" "You know you're my favorite aunt. I really will miss you." "Miss me, sweetie. What do you mean?" I'm not going anywhere. Are you sure? Yes, of course. Where do you think I'll be going? Well, it's just that. What is it? You can tell me anything. I swear I won't tell anyone else a word. Okay, well, I heard Mommy and Uncle talking the other day. Uncle as in Uncle Toby? Yeah, Mommy said she's going to help Uncle with getting some cases. Cases? What are you talking about? They kept talking about some cases that would give them some money, and then she told Uncle that he would have a nice big house after you left you. What? Oh my God, sweetie, when did you hear this? Like 2 days ago. Are you sure you heard correctly? Yes, I'm sure. As soon as Mommy saw that I was listening to them, she yelled at me to go to my room. She also told me not to tell you anything about her talk with Uncle, but I only told you because you're my favorite aunt. Thank you so much, sweetie. Now enough of this. Let's go out and have a fun day. I tried my best to go about the rest of the day as if I hadn't heard what Viola told me. I could tell she felt bad for telling me, but I reassured her that she did nothing wrong. I spoiled her as I always did, and when it was time for her to go back home, I made her promise not to tell her mom or Toby what she had shared with me. Viola promised not to say a word and hugged me goodbye when Julia picked her up from my place. As soon as they left, panic began to rise in my chest. I knew something was off with Toby, but realizing he was trying to trick me into spending my money on him was a new low. It was something I would have never expected from him. Desperate, I did the only thing I could think of. I called Toby's father, Edgar, who was a lawyer. I didn't know why I called him, considering he could have been in on Toby and Julia's plan. However, I had a gut feeling that Edgar was a good man. Besides, he had always treated me like a princess when I visited his place and put Julia in her place whenever she tried to bully me. Edgar picked up the call in his usual warm manner. Hello, darling. To what do I owe this phone call? Hi, Edgar. How are you? Oh, I'm doing quite well. What about you? I actually don't know. I called because I need your help. My help? What could I help you with? Isn't Toby around? He is, but he's kind of the problem. Oh no, I always told that boy to treat you right because it's really hard to come by women as amazing as you. Thank you, Edgar. You may be the only one in your family who thinks of me as amazing. What are you talking about? Well, I was babysitting Viola the other day, and she told me that Toby and Julia were planning something against me. Against you? What do you mean? She didn't know the specifics, but there is a case involved. Apparently, they plan on taking money from me. What in God's name are you telling me? I don't know the full story either. I'm worried, and I figured I'd come to you for help, considering you're a lawyer. You did a great job coming to me. Now tell me, do you believe Viola? I do, especially because in the past few months, Toby has been distancing himself from me. I tried talking to him, but he never took me seriously. All right, and why do you think Julia is involved? Ever since she moved back, they began to spend a lot of time together. I get that they were living far apart for years, but in the past few months, he's been going over to her house for hours every single day. That's a little weird. Did something happen a few months ago that triggered Toby's behavior? Yes, I got my grandmother's inheritance after she passed away. It was a large amount of money. Toby wanted to use it to buy a house, but I was hesitant. After that, he's been acting strange. Right, my guess is that they're trying to get your money. First of all, I'm so sorry that my children are doing this to you. This is not how I raised them. Secondly, why don't you drop by my office tomorrow, and we'll hash this out properly. That sounds great, and you have nothing to apologize for. You're clearly a good man. Thank you for helping me out. I don't know what I would do without you. I was genuinely grateful that Edgar was helping me out. I didn't think he would side with me over his children, but I was glad that he did. The next day, I took a day off from work and made my way to Edgar's office. Once there, Edgar apologized once again for Toby and Julia's behavior, but I told him to focus on helping me navigate the situation. We suspected that Toby was going to ask for a divorce, so our first order of business was to contact all the reputable divorce lawyers in our city and ask for advice. This would limit Toby's access to good lawyers due to the conflict of interest since they already knew my side. Next, we needed to figure out how they planned to take my inheritance from me. Thankfully, I had been smart enough to keep my inheritance money in a separate bank account and had not used it to buy anything for Toby or me. I had planned on buying Toby some luxury items he'd always wanted, but clearly that was never going to happen. Since there was no other way for them to get that money from me, Edgar and I figured they were planning to outright steal from me. The only thing I could control was setting up the perfect trap to catch them. You see, I had a top-of-the-line security system installed in my apartment because I was paranoid about break-ins, which was a fact Toby knew and agreed to when he moved in. The next step was to subtly let Toby know that my bank details were logged in on my laptop. This wasn't hard. I just pretended to have some banking issues that he could help me with. Finally, I told Toby that I was going to meet a friend over the weekend, leaving him home alone. I then met Edgar, who would serve as a witness and corroborate my alibi. In the middle of our conversation, I received a notification that money had been transferred from my account to our joint account. I immediately called the police and reported it. When I got back from meeting Edgar, Toby was sitting in the dining room and asked me to sit with him. We need to talk. Oh, about what? About us? Okay, we're not working out. I agree. You agree? What do you mean? Well, for starters, I did not like how you threatened to end the relationship over money. Money I would have spent on us had you not done that. I didn't think you would. And that's another point. You think so lowly of me. I don't think that's a sign of a good partner. Like you've been a good partner, you've been selfish since the start, and I only put up with it because. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was the police arriving to investigate the reported theft. I loved you. How in the world was I selfish? I helped you pay off your student loans first instead of mine. I supported you for a whole year when you didn't have a job. I sacrificed so much to make sure you were happy. The few times I didn't do what you wanted, you labeled me as a selfish monster. Don't act like what you did was some righteous thing. I would have done the same for you. Would you? You never helped me out when I was sick. Why would I think you would have sacrificed your comfort for me when I really needed it? You're just trying to make me feel bad. No, and the last reason I don't want to be with you is that I don't want to be with a lying, manipulative thief. What are you saying? Don't think I don't know about what you and Julia have been planning. I saw you transfer money out of my account into our joint account. I know you wanted to split that during the divorce. No. Oh, don't even bother. I know everything. You are a pathetic man, and I see no reason to be with you. Well, I'll still get half of what I transferred into our account. I still win. Will you? If I recall correctly, I had security cameras installed in my apartment. You made that transaction from my laptop at a time when I wasn't home. I already reported you for theft. The police should be here any time now. You did what? Oh, here they come. Good luck. Just then, the doorbell rang. The police had arrived to investigate the reported theft. I'll see you in court. The relief I felt at finally seeing Toby pay for his actions was unparalleled. The following weeks were a nightmare of courtroom sessions and evidence viewing. Along with the charges of theft against him, I also filed for a divorce. Edgar was my lawyer, and he fought long and hard to ensure Toby paid properly for his crime. Edgar won the case for me, and Toby was sentenced to 2 years in jail and fined an additional $30,000. Nothing was sweeter than the taste of revenge. Just as Edgar and I were celebrating our victory, Julia came up to us. Julia had conveniently been absent during all the previous trials and only chose to show up on the day of the verdict. That in itself spoke volumes about her. But when she approached us, she looked angry and pointed her finger at Edgar. Dad, you were helping this witch. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't have helped Toby. I don't know, because she literally put your son in jail, and he deserved his sentence. That will make him think twice before trying to steal from someone again. How could you do that to your own son? Now, Julia, how could you do that to your own brother? Don't think I did not see the real reason behind your plan. You were going to help Toby get the money so you could also reap the benefits of it. I was trying to give him a break from this jerk here. You have no idea how toxic she is for him. I don't think she was the toxic one, Julia. You were a bad influence on him, and he was stupid enough to fall for your little game. He's getting the punishment he deserves, and maybe now he'll think twice before ever listening to you again. You know you're going to lose him this way. He will never talk to you again. Good, because I have no children as far as I'm concerned. Don't be so dramatic. I'll be here, but I'm not happy with the way you treated my baby brother. As far as I'm concerned, neither you nor your brother are my children because I know for a fact that this is not how I raised my kids. What are you talking about? What I'm saying is that I'm disowning both of you, and I want nothing to do with either of you. You can't do that. I actually can, and I'm going to do just that. This is all Mabel's fault. If she just thought of someone other than herself for a second, this would not have been happening. No, you should not have been so greedy. I was going to spoil Toby with all the things he wanted, but you had to interfere. You took away everything from him, and I hope you sit and think long and hard about what you did to your brother. Goodbye. I grabbed Edgar's hand and we left. We couldn't help but let out a chuckle at what had happened. I was happy that Toby got what he deserved and that I was going to be free of his manipulative ways. I was also happy to see Edgar take my side. I did feel bad that it was because of me that he had lost both of his children, but he assured me that it was their own decisions that led to that. I took him out for coffee afterward, and we've maintained a good friendship ever since. Julia harassed me a bunch over text, and Edgar took it upon himself to tell Julia and her husband to leave me alone. Now this is where I unintentionally got revenge on Julia as well. You see, Julia's husband had no idea about Julia's involvement in what happened between Toby and me, so he called Edgar and asked him what happened and was shocked to learn about what Julia had done. Apparently, their marriage had been in the dumps for a while because of Julia's constant nagging that he never brought home enough money while simultaneously refusing to work. He did not like that she would go to such lengths and ask for a divorce. Of course, he also asked for full custody of Viola and managed to get almost full custody. Julia got custody for every other weekend. Not to mention, she didn't get much through that divorce either, considering that he had her sign an ironclad prenup before marriage. Julia only received a small amount of alimony for a set period of time, and she was kicked out of their house. Once again, she blamed it all on me. And if I'm being completely honest, I was a little happy to see the way she got what she deserved. She tried to meddle in someone else's life, and she paid the ultimate price for it. Not to mention, I got to see Viola still because she loved me, and Julia's ex-husband could not say no to Viola. He was very apologetic for what Julia did, but I reminded him that he had no idea, so he had nothing to apologize for. And before you ask, yes, I am spoiling Viola senseless. As for me, my life is only getting better. I got a promotion at work and also decided to hire an accountant to help manage all my finances. I have invested my money in a few places, and it's only a matter of time before I get my returns on those. Getting to where I am today took a lot of struggle, but let me tell you, the view from where I'm at is one that I'm loving. I have a better understanding of people, and I'm going to be a lot more cautious. Thank you for your time.
Greetings, I'm Mabel, and I've recently turned 30. A substantial inheritance came my way, unveiling the unsightly aspects of my husband. Today, I'm eager to share this tale and how, unintentionally, I found retribution against two individuals simultaneously. Let me commence by delving a bit into my background. I grew up distanced from my grandparents, yet our bond remained strong. Every 3 to 4 months, they would visit, showering me with affection. My grandmother was particularly fond of me, and her passing when I was 17 left me devastated. Choosing a college in her state allowed me to stay close to her. It was there that I met Toby, my ex-husband, during our junior year. Our relationship flourished, and we got engaged after graduation. While waiting for financial stability to tie the knot, Toby moved in with me. Though our relationship was solid, his sister Julia became a constant source of strife. Despite living in another state, she maintained an unhealthy obsession with Toby, harboring resentment towards me. However, I tolerated her antics due to her bringing over her daughter, Viola, whom I adored. 3 years into our engagement, Toby and I decided it was time to marry. The celebration was joyous until, 4 years into marriage, 2 significant events unfolded. Firstly, my beloved grandmother passed away, leaving me heartbroken and inheriting a substantial fortune. Secondly, Julia and her family returned to town, causing Toby's attention to shift. He spent most of his time at Julia's, and when at home, Julia became a frequent visitor. The only solace was spending time with Viola. I was still grappling with the grief over my grandmother's passing, and Toby seemed increasingly distant. Attempts to discuss my feelings with him proved futile until one rare evening when he returned home alone after work. "Hey, sweetie, how was your day?" I inquired, seizing the opportunity. "It was pretty good. What about you?" Toby replied, his nonchalant demeanor evident. "I've noticed you've been visiting Julia quite often. What's going on?" I ventured. "We're really close, and I miss her. I just feel better around her," he explained. Sensing an opening for a deeper conversation, I probed further. "Do you want to know what we talked about?" I asked, hoping for a connection. "Yeah, sure. Tell me," he responded. "I mentioned our plan to buy a house, and Julia was curious about how we could afford it. I shared about your inheritance, and she thinks it would be a great investment for us," Toby revealed. Interrupting him, I stated firmly, "I never agreed to that." "Listen, Julia thinks it's a wise move. We'd be well settled for the rest of our lives," Toby argued, seemingly more focused on the financial benefits. "I have other ideas for my money, things that could benefit both of us in the long run," I asserted. Tension escalated as Toby insisted. "I want to invest in a house. We should do it together. I don't want to spend all my money on one thing. I get to decide how to use it." I defended my stance. Toby issued an ultimatum. "Either invest our money in something for both of us, or I'm leaving." Perplexed, I questioned, "Where would you go? Are you okay with leaving me over money?" "You're the one making it about money." "I thought you loved me and wanted a future together," he retorted. Realizing the disconnect, I held my ground. "I'm keeping my money, and I decide how to spend it. But if you're leaving over this, it's your choice." Toby distanced himself after our confrontation, spending even more time at Julia's. She stopped visiting, except to drop Viola off. Something felt off, and I knew I had to stand my ground. Every time Julia needed me to babysit Viola, I attempted to have a conversation with Toby about what was bothering him. Despite my multiple inquiries, he consistently brushed me off, claiming that nothing was wrong. Eventually, I gave up, deciding to wait until he was ready to open up. However, the situation took an unexpected turn when Julia dropped Viola off at my place one day for me to babysit. "Hey, Viola, how's my favorite niece doing?" I greeted her. "I'm your only niece, but I hope I'll always be your favorite," she replied. "Of course you will be. Anyway, what do you want to do today?" Viola excitedly suggested. "I was thinking we could go get our nails done and then get some ice cream." "Yay! Can I paint my nails pink?" she asked. "Of course you can. And can I get strawberry ice cream?" "Why can't you? We'll get you everything you want. I only have one niece, and if I don't spoil her, would I really be her aunt?" Viola sweetly declared, "You know you're my favorite aunt. I really will miss you." "Miss me, sweetie? What do you mean? I'm not going anywhere." "Are you sure?" "Yes, of course. Where do you think I'll be going?" "Well, it's just that." "What is it?" "You can tell me anything. I swear I won't tell anyone else a word." Viola hesitated but finally shared, "Okay, well, I heard Mommy and Uncle talking the other day." Uncle, as in Uncle Toby, yeah. "Mommy said she's going to help Uncle with getting some cases." "Cases? What are you talking about?" "They kept talking about some cases that would give them some money. Then she told her uncle that he would have a nice big house after he left you." "What? Oh my God, sweetie. When did you hear about this?" "Well, I heard about this like 2 days ago." "Are you sure you heard correctly?" "Yes, I'm sure that I heard correctly. As soon as Mommy saw that I was listening to them, she yelled at me to go to my room. She also told me not to tell you anything about her talk with her uncle, but I only told you because you're my favorite aunt." "Thank you so much, sweetie. Now, enough of this. Let's go out and have a fun day." I did my best to carry on with the day as if I hadn't heard Viola's revelation. I could tell she felt bad for telling me, but I assured her that she did nothing wrong. After enjoying the day, when it was time for Viola to go back home, I made her promise not to tell her mom or Toby about our conversation. Viola promised and hugged me goodbye. As Julia picked her up, panic began to rise in my chest. I sensed something was wrong with Toby. but the idea of him trying to manipulate me into spending my money on him was a new low. It was something I would have never expected from him. So I took the only course of action I could think of and called Toby's father, Edgar, who happened to be a lawyer. Despite the potential suspicion that Edgar might be involved in Toby and Julia's plan, my gut feeling told me he was a good man. Edgar had always treated me like a princess and consistently put Julia in her place whenever she tried to bully me. Edgar answered the call in his usual amiable manner. "Hello, darling. To what do I owe this phone call?" "Hi, Edgar. How are you?" I asked. "Oh, I'm doing quite well. What about you?" he replied. I actually don't know. I called because I need your help," I confessed. "My help? What could I help you with? Isn't Toby around?" Edgar inquired. "He is, but he kind of is the problem," I explained. "Oh no, I always told that boy to treat you right because it's really hard to come by women as amazing as you," he sympathized. "Thank you, Edgar. You may be the only one in your family that thinks of me as amazing." "What are you talking about?" "Well, I was babysitting Viola the other day, and she told me that Toby and Julia were planning something against me." "Against you? What do you mean?" "She didn't know the specifics, but there is a case involved. Apparently, they plan on taking money from me." "What in God's name are you telling me?" "I also don't know what's going on. I'm worried, and I figured I'd come to you for help, considering you're a lawyer." "You did a great job of coming to me. Now tell me, do you believe Viola?" "I do, and only because in the past few months, Toby has begun to draw away from me. I tried to talk to him about it, but he never took me seriously." "All right. And why do you think Julia is involved?" "Ever since she moved back, they began to spend a lot of time together." "I get it. They were living far apart for years before, and it made sense. But then, in the past few months, he was going over to her house for hours every single day. That's a little weird. Did something happen a few months ago that triggered Toby's strange reaction?" "I got my grandmother's inheritance because she passed away. It was quite a large amount of money. Toby wanted to use it to buy a house, but I was a little hesitant about it. After that, he's been acting weird. My guess is that they're going to try and get your money." "First of all, I'm so worried that my children are doing this to you. This was not how I raised them. Secondly, why don't you drop by my office tomorrow and we'll hash this out properly?" "That sounds great. And you have nothing to apologize for. You're clearly a good man. Thank you for helping me out. I don't know what I would do without you." I was genuinely grateful that Edgar was helping me out. I did not think he would side with me over his children, but I was glad that he did. The next day, I took a day off from work and made my way over to his office. Once there, Edgar apologized once again for Toby and Julia's actions, but I told him to just help me navigate around this. We figured that Toby was going to ask for a divorce. So the first order of business was to contact all the reputable divorce lawyers in our city and ask for advice. This would then limit Toby's access to good lawyers because there would be a conflict of interest, considering they already knew my side. The next thing we had to figure out was how they planned to take my inheritance from me. Fortunately, I had the foresight to keep my inheritance money in a separate bank account, refraining from using it for any purchases for Toby or myself. While I initially intended to buy Toby some luxury items he desired, it became evident that such plans were unlikely to materialize. Edgar and I suspected that the only way for them to access that money was through outright theft. With this in mind, I decided to set up the perfect scenario to catch them. My apartment already had a top-of-the-line security system due to my concerns about break-ins, a fact Toby was aware of and agreed to when he moved in. The next step was subtly letting Toby know that my bank details were stored on my laptop. Creating a facade of bank troubles that he could help me with accomplished this effortlessly. Lastly, I informed Toby that I would be meeting a friend over the weekend, leaving him home alone. Meanwhile, Edgar would serve as a witness and corroborate my alibi. During our conversation, I received a notification that money had been transferred from my account to our joint account. Seizing the opportunity, I promptly called the police to report the unauthorized transaction. Upon my return from meeting Edgar, Toby sat in the dining room, urging me to join him. "We need to talk," he asserted. "About what?" "About us?" I questioned. "Okay, we're not working out," he admitted. "I agree. What do you mean?" I responded. "Well, for starters, I didn't like how you threatened to end the relationship over money. I would have spent on us had you not done that. I didn't think that you would. That's another point. You think so lowly of me, and I don't think that's a sign of a good partner. It's as if you've been a good partner. You've been selfish since the start, and I only put up with it because I love you." "How in the world was I selfish?" "I helped you pay off your student loans first instead of mine. I supported you for a whole year when you didn't have a job. I sacrificed so much to make sure you were happy. The few times I didn't do what you wanted, I became a selfish monster to you. Don't act like what you did was some righteous thing. I would have done the same for you. Would you? You never helped me out when I was sick. Why would I think you would sacrifice your comfort for me when I really needed it? You're just trying to make me feel bad." "No, and the last reason for not wanting to be with you is that I don't want to be with a lying, manipulative thief." "What are you saying? Don't think I don't know about what you and Julia have been planning. I observed you transferring funds from my account to our joint account. I'm aware that you intended to split it during the divorce. Don't bother denying it. I've informed about everything. You've proven to be deceitful, and I see no reason to remain with you." "Well, I'll still get half of what I transferred into our account. I still win," Toby argued. "If I recall correctly, I had security cameras installed in my apartment, and you made that transaction from my laptop at a time when I wasn't at home. I've already reported you for theft. The police should be here anytime soon." "You did what?" "Oh, here they come. Good luck. I'll see you in court." The relief I felt at finally seeing Toby held accountable was unparalleled. The subsequent weeks were filled with courtroom sessions and evidence reviews. Alongside the theft charges, I filed for divorce, with Edgar serving as my lawyer. He fought vigorously to ensure that Toby paid appropriately for his crimes, and Edgar won the case. Toby was sentenced to 2 years in jail and fined an additional $30,000. The taste of revenge was sweet. As Edgar and I celebrated our victory, Julia approached, conveniently absent during prior trials, only showing up on the day of the verdict. Her anger was evident as she pointed her finger at Edgar. "Dad, you are helping this witch. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't have helped Toby." "I don't know, because she literally put your brother in jail, and he deserved his sentence. That will make him think twice before trying to steal from someone again," Edgar responded. Julia questioned, "How could you do that to your own son?" "How could you do that to your own brother?" I retorted, "Don't think I didn't see the real reason behind your plan. You were going to help Toby get the money so you could also reap the benefits of it. I was trying to give him a break from this jerk. You have no idea how toxic she is for him." "I don't think she was the toxic one, Julia. You were a bad influence on him, and he was stupid enough to fall for your little game. He's getting the punishment he deserves, and maybe now he'll think twice before ever listening to you. You know you're going to lose him this way." "He will never talk to you again," Julia stated. "Good, because I have no children, as far as I'm concerned," Edgar replied. "Don't be so dramatic. I'll be here, but I'm not happy with the way you treated my baby brother. As far as I'm concerned, neither you nor your brother are my children because I know for a fact that this is not how I raised my kids." "What are you talking about?" "What I'm conveying is that I'm disowning both of you, and I want nothing to do with either of you." "You can't do that." "Actually, I can, and I'm going to do just that. This is all Mabel's fault. If she just thought of someone other than herself for a second, this would not have been happening. No, you should not have been so greedy. I was going to spoil Toby with all the things he wanted, but you had to interfere. You took away everything from him, and I hope you sit and think long and hard about what you did to your brother. Goodbye." I grabbed Edgar's hand and we left. We couldn't help but let out a chuckle at what had happened. I was happy that Toby got what he deserved, and that I was going to be free of his manipulative ways. I was also happy to see Edgar take my side. I did feel bad that it was because of me that he had lost both of his children, but he assured me that it was their own decisions that led to that. I took him out for coffee after, and we've maintained a good friendship ever since. Julia harassed me a bunch over text, and Edgar took it upon himself to tell Julia and her husband to leave me alone. Now this is where I unintentionally got revenge on Julia as well. You see, Julia's husband had no idea about Julia's involvement in what happened between Toby and me, so he called Edgar and asked him what happened and was shocked to learn about what Julia had done. Apparently, their marriage had been in the dumps for a while because of Julia's constant nagging that he never brought home enough money while simultaneously refusing to work. He did not like that she would go to such lengths and asked for a divorce. Of course, he also asked for full custody of Viola and managed to get almost full custody. Julia got custody for every other weekend. Not to mention she didn't get much through that divorce either, considering that he had her sign an ironclad prenuptial agreement before marriage. Julia only received a small amount of alimony for a set period, and she was kicked out of their house. Once again, she blamed it all on me, and if I'm being completely honest, I was a little happy to see the way she got what she deserved. She tried to meddle in someone else's life, and she paid the ultimate price for it. Not to mention, I got to see Viola still because she loved me, and Julia's ex-husband could not say no to Viola. He was very apologetic for what Julia did, but I reminded him that he had no idea, so he had nothing to apologize for. And before you ask, yes, I am spoiling Viola senseless. As for me, my life is only getting better. I got a promotion at work and also decided to hire an accountant to help manage all my finances. I had invested my money in a few places, and it's only a matter of time before I get my returns on those. Getting to where I am today took a lot of struggle, but let me tell you, the view from where I'm at is one that I'm loving. I have a better understanding of people, and I'm going to be a lot more cautious. Thank you for your time. Hi there, I'm Mabel, a 30-year-old who recently found herself in possession of a substantial fortune. This unexpected windfall led me to uncover an unsavory side of my husband. Today, I'll share this tale and how I inadvertently sought retribution against two individuals simultaneously. But first, a bit more about me. I had a close bond with my grandparents, even though we lived apart. Every few months, they'd visit, and my grandmother, in particular, showered me with love and affection. My grandfather's passing at 17 left me devastated, and I decided to attend college in my grandmother's state to stay close to her. It was during college that I met Toby, my now ex-husband, and we began dating in our junior year. Our relationship flourished, and we got engaged after graduating. While waiting for financial stability to tie the knot, Toby moved in with me. Everything seemed great, except for the challenge of dealing with his sister, Julia. Julia, living in a different state, adored Toby excessively and viewed me as a threat to their bond. Despite her constant rudeness, I tolerated her visits because she brought along her daughter, Viola, with whom I shared a special connection. Toby, unfortunately, never stood up for me, unwilling to hurt his sister. Fast forward to 4 years into our marriage, two significant events unfolded. Firstly, my beloved grandmother passed away, leaving me grief-stricken. Inheriting a substantial sum meant little compared to the loss. Secondly, Julia and her family returned to town. Toby's presence at home dwindled as he spent most of his time with Julia or, when at home, focused on her needs. Desperate to reconnect with Toby, I attempted to discuss my feelings, but he remained indifferent, until one rare day when he returned home alone, affording us a chance to talk. I cautiously broached the subject. "Hey, sweetie, how was your day?" This marked a rare opportunity to address the growing distance between us. I yearned for her presence, and being around her just makes everything feel right. "Anyway, do you want to hear what we discussed?" "Sure, go ahead." Well, I was sharing with her our plans to purchase a house. Hold on, I never agreed to that. Just hear me out. Julia asked about the funding, and I explained your inheritance. She believes it's a wise investment for our future. Why do you think that? You have more than enough money to almost fully buy a house. Investing in a home would secure our future, and I genuinely think it's a smart move. But I have other ideas for my money, things that could benefit both of us. I don't want to put all my money into one thing. It's like you're implying that your money is exclusively yours, not ours. Well, in a way, it is. I decide how to use it, and you can't dictate that. Look, either invest in something for both of us, or I'm leaving. Leave? Where would you go? You're practically begging me to use my money for a house. If you choose to leave, it's your loss. So you're fine with me leaving because you want to keep your money to yourself. Don't twist my words. I brought it up because I thought you loved me and wanted a future together. Forgive me for trying to secure our future. You're not making sense. I'm keeping my money and I'll decide where and how to spend it. Fine, but can you at least consider spending it on a house for us? I wasn't sure why Toby was so insistent on buying a house, but something felt off. That's why I stood my ground. After that conversation, Toby distanced himself even more, spending increasingly more time at Julia's place. Julia stopped visiting, except to drop Viola off for me to babysit. I attempted to have a conversation with Toby numerous times, trying to understand what was bothering him. However, he always evaded the topic, insisting that everything was fine. Eventually, I gave up, hoping he'd open up when he was ready. Things took an unexpected turn one day when Julia dropped off Viola for me to babysit. "Hey, Viola, how's my favorite niece doing?" I teased. "I'm your only niece. Still your favorite though," she chuckled. We planned a day out for ourselves, discussing nail colors and ice cream flavors. Suddenly, Viola dropped a bombshell. "I heard Mommy and Uncle talking the other day about cases and a big house after you left." Shocked, I probed further. Viola confirmed what she heard. She felt guilty for sharing, but I assured her she did nothing wrong. After our day together, I made her promise not to tell her mom or Toby. As Julia picked up Viola, panic gripped me. Toby's deception was unfathomable. I decided to call Toby's father, Edgar, a lawyer. Despite the risk, I trusted Edgar's integrity. He answered cheerfully, and I hesitantly explained the situation. "Hi, Edgar. How are you?" I began. After exchanging pleasantries, I confessed my concerns about Toby's behavior. Despite Toby's presence being the issue, I sensed Edgar could help. His response, however, left me anxious. "I consistently urged Toby to treat you right because women as remarkable as you are hard to come by." "Thank you, Edgar. You might be the only one in your family who sees me that way." I expressed my gratitude. "What are you talking about?" he inquired. I recounted babysitting Viola, who disclosed that Toby and Julia were plotting something against me. Edgar was taken aback, seeking clarification. Viola didn't know the specifics, but there was mention of a case and plans to take money from me. Stunned, Edgar asked, "What in God's name are you telling me?" "I also don't know what's going on. I'm worried, and I thought I'd come to you for help, considering you're a lawyer." "Good job coming to me. Do you believe Viola?" he asked. "I do, especially because Toby has distanced himself from me in the past few months. I tried talking to him, but he never took me seriously." "Why do you think Julia is involved?" "Ever since she moved back, they've been spending a lot of time together. I get that they were apart for years, but recently, Toby's been at her house for hours every day. It's a bit odd. Something must have happened a few months ago that triggered Toby's strange behavior." "Ah, what happened a few months ago?" "I received my grandmother's inheritance after her passing, a substantial amount. Toby wanted to use it to buy a house, but I was hesitant. Since then, he's been acting strange. My guess is they're planning to get their hands on my money." Edgar expressed concern for his children's actions, apologized, and suggested meeting at his office the next day to discuss the situation further. Grateful for his support, I took a day off and visited his office. Edgar apologized once again, but I insisted on focusing on finding a resolution. We suspected Toby might seek a divorce, so our first step was to contact reputable divorce lawyers in the city for advice, limiting Toby's options due to a potential conflict of interest. The next challenge was unraveling their plan to take my inheritance. Thankfully, Edgar was by my side, offering guidance and support. I had the foresight to keep my inheritance money in a separate bank account, never using it for Toby or myself. Though I intended to purchase luxury items for Toby, it became clear that it wouldn't happen since they couldn't access the funds. Edgar and I suspected they might resort to outright theft. Knowing I could control the situation by setting a trap, I utilized the advanced security system in my apartment, a precaution against potential break-ins, which Toby knew about and agreed to when he moved in. Subtly, I hinted to Toby that my bank details were on my laptop, feigning bank troubles he could assist with. Furthermore, I informed Toby of plans to meet a friend over the weekend, leaving him alone at home. Edgar acted as my alibi. During our conversation, I received a notification of a transfer from my account to our joint one. Alerting the police upon my return, I confronted Toby. Sitting in the dining room, Toby initiated the conversation. "We need to talk." "About us?" I inquired. "We're not working out," Toby declared. "I agree," I replied, surprised. "You agree? What do you mean?" "For one, I didn't appreciate you threatening to end things over money. I would have spent it on both of us had you not done that. I didn't think you would. And that's another issue. You think so little of me. That's not a sign of a good partner. You've been selfish since the start, and I tolerated it because I loved you." "How was I selfish?" "I helped you pay off your student loans first, not mine. I supported you for a year when you were unemployed. I sacrificed a lot for your happiness. Don't act like you were righteous. I would have done the same for you. You never helped me out," Toby countered. "Why would I expect you to sacrifice your comfort for me when I was sick? You're just trying to make me feel bad," Toby retorted. "No, and my last reason for not wanting to be with you is that I don't want to be with a lying, manipulative thief," I replied. "What are you saying?" "Don't think I don't know about what you and Julia have been planning. I saw you transfer money from my account into our joint account. I know you wanted to split that during the divorce." No, don't even bother. I know about everything. You are a pathetic man, and I see no reason to be with you." "Well, I'll still get half of what I transferred into our account. I still win." "Will you?" "If I recall correctly, I had security cameras installed in my apartment, and you made that transaction from my laptop when I wasn't at home. I've already reported you for theft. The police should be here anytime soon." "You did what?" "Oh, here they come. Good luck. I'll see you in court." The relief of finally seeing Toby pay for his actions was unparalleled. The following weeks were a nightmare of courtroom sessions and evidence viewing. Along with the theft charges, I filed for divorce. Edgar, my lawyer, fought diligently to ensure Toby paid properly for his crime. Edgar won the case, and Toby was sentenced to 2 years in jail with an additional $30,000 fine. Nothing tasted sweeter than the flavor of revenge. As Edgar and I celebrated our victory, Julia approached us. She had been conveniently absent during previous trials, choosing to show up only on the day of the verdict. That in itself spoke volumes. Angry, she pointed her finger at Edgar. "Dad, you were helping this witch. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't have helped Toby." "I don't know, Julia. Maybe because she literally put your brother in jail and he deserved his sentence. That'll make him think twice before trying to steal from someone again." "How could you do that to your own son? How could you do that to your own brother? Don't think I didn't see the real reason behind your plan. You were going to help Toby get the money so you could also reap the benefits. I was trying to give him a break from this jerk here. You have no idea how toxic she is for him." "I don't think she was the toxic one, Julia. You were a bad influence on him, and he was stupid enough to fall for your little game. He's getting the punishment he deserves, and maybe now he'll think twice before ever listening to you. You know you're going to lose him this way. He will never talk to you. Good, because, as far as I'm concerned, I have no children. I'll be here, but I'm not happy with the way you treated my baby brother. As far as I'm concerned, neither you nor your brother are my children because I know for a fact that this is not how I raised my kids. What are you talking about? What I'm saying is that I'm disowning both of you, and I want nothing to do with either of you. You can't do that. I actually can, and I'm going to do just that. This is all Mabel's fault. If she just thought of someone other than herself for a second, this would not have been happening. No, you should not have been so greedy. I was going to spoil Toby with all the things he wanted, but you had to interfere. You took away everything from him, and I hope you sit and think long and hard about what you did to your brother. Goodbye. I grabbed Edgar's hand, and we left. We couldn't help but let out a chuckle at what had happened. I was happy that Toby got what he deserved, and that I was going to be free of his manipulative ways. I was also happy to see Edgar take my side. I did feel bad that it was because of me that he had lost both of his children, but he assured me that it was their own decisions that led to that. I took him out for coffee afterward, and we've maintained a good friendship ever since. Julia harassed me a bunch over text, and Edgar took it upon himself to tell Julia and her husband to leave me alone. Now this is where I unintentionally got revenge on Julia as well. You see, Julia's husband had no idea about Julia's involvement in what happened between Toby and me, so he called Edgar and asked him what happened and was shocked to learn about what Julia had done. Apparently, their marriage had been in the dumps for a while because of Julia's constant nagging that he never brought home enough money while simultaneously refusing to work. He did not like that she would go to such lengths and ask for a divorce, of course. He also asked for full custody of Viola and managed to get almost full custody. Julia got custody for every other weekend. Not to mention, she didn't get much through that divorce either, considering that he had her sign an ironclad prenuptial agreement before marriage. Julia only received a small amount of alimony for a set period of time, and she was kicked out of their house. Once again, she blamed it all on me, and if I'm being completely honest, I was a little happy to see the way she got what she deserved. She tried to meddle in someone else's life, and she paid the ultimate price for it. Not to mention, I got to see Viola still because she loved me, and Julia's ex-husband could not say no to Viola. He was very apologetic for what Julia did, but I reminded him that he had no idea, so he had nothing to apologize for. And before you ask, yes, I am spoiling Viola senseless. As for me, my life is only getting better. I got a promotion at work and also decided to hire an accountant to help manage all my finances. I have invested my money in a few places, and it's only a matter of time before I get my returns on those. Getting to where I am today took a lot of struggle, but let me tell you, the view from where I'm at is one that I'm loving. I have a better understanding of people, and I'm going to be a lot more cautious. Thank you for your time. I go by the name Alice, leading a seemingly ordinary life as a housewife. My husband John is an exceptionally kind partner, and our relationship has been free of any disagreements. It's not to boast, but he truly is the ideal companion. Currently residing in an apartment close to John's parents' house, this decision was intentional. With both my parents no longer with us, we wanted to be nearby in case of the birth of our child or any unforeseen issues. Additionally, considering the potential future care needs of John's parents, I saw the practicality of our living arrangement. However, a strange occurrence started to unfold during our dinner gatherings with John's parents. Mysterious stomach pains plagued me, leading me to initially avoid meals at John's house. Unfortunately, circumstances forced me to attend, and that's when an unexpected event transpired, revealing a shocking revelation about my mother-in-law's actions, shedding light on the source of my inexplicable pain. Before these unsettling events, John and I had opted out of a traditional wedding ceremony. I wasn't keen on being the center of attention, and we believed redirecting funds towards travel and hobbies made more sense than a lavish ceremony. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law, who conducted free cooking classes as a hobby, proposed a dinner party to celebrate our marriage. Excited to showcase her culinary skills, she warmly welcomed John, but exhibited a noticeable coldness toward me. Despite the confusion, the dinner party proceeded with a variety of exquisite dishes prepared by her, momentarily overshadowing the earlier sense of unwelcome. Expressing gratitude for the delightful meals, I thought the initial discomfort might have been a misunderstanding. However, that night, severe stomach pain struck suddenly, leading to a rushed visit to the emergency room. Despite inconclusive diagnosis due to the absence of a specialist, my condition stabilized after receiving IV treatment for 2 hours. The cause of my distress, possibly linked to expired bread consumed earlier, remained a mystery. After returning home with John, I found myself grappling with unexplained stomach pain every time I dined at my in-laws' place following a particular incident. Seeking advice, I discussed this issue over lunch with a long-lost friend. She suggested, could it be that simply visiting your husband's house is causing you stress? Surprisingly, she had experienced a similar situation, falling ill due to harassment from her mother-in-law. After relocating to a new apartment further away, her health improved significantly. Although I hadn't initially considered visits to my in-laws as a source of stress, my friend's advice made me ponder if there was an underlying unease in my heart. Concerned about my recurring illnesses, my husband, who had initially brushed off the matter, began to take it seriously. Consequently, he suggested that we temporarily halt our visits to my in-laws. While the exact cause remained elusive, my husband suspected his mother's cooking, given my consistent bouts of illness after meals there. According to him, his mother often expressed loneliness and a desire for shared meals, but he had declined due to his worry for my health. Despite our decision to refrain from visiting, a new challenge emerged. My brother-in-law was scheduled to visit our parents for his wedding greetings, and a family dinner was arranged. Reluctantly, my husband explained, I can't decline this time, as my brother is going to our parents' place. We're expected to participate in the dinner meeting with the entire family. Despite my inclination to avoid a direct encounter with my mother-in-law, I couldn't neglect the familial obligation tied to my brother-in-law and his wife. Deciding to participate in the family dinner, little did anyone anticipate the ensuing commotion it would cause. Despite my husband's concern for my health, he advised me, Alice, you don't have to eat the meals today. As we arrived at the dinner meeting, my mother-in-law greeted us with her usual warm smile, particularly directed at my husband. However, I couldn't help but sense an even colder attitude towards me compared to before. Upon entering the room, my brother-in-law and his wife were engaged in a pleasant conversation with my father-in-law. My mother-in-law's homemade dishes were beautifully presented on the table, emitting an enticing aroma that stirred my appetite. The mystery persisted. Why did I fall ill after consuming these seemingly delicious meals? No matter how I pondered, the reason eluded me. Seated at the table, my mother-in-law promptly urged me to start eating. Swiftly, my husband intervened, stating that I wasn't feeling well. However, she seemed to dismiss my condition as a minor issue, offering me a dish with a wordless smile, almost challenging me to eat. Feeling at a loss for words, my brother-in-law came to my defense, expressing gratitude for my presence despite my illness. He suggested it was sufficient to exchange greetings and encouraged me to go home and rest if needed. Informed in advance by my husband, he and his wife stood by my side. Ignoring their son's words, my mother-in-law insisted on packaging the dish in a Tupperware for me to try later. Wondering why she was so insistent on my eating, I nodded to avoid upsetting her. As she went to the kitchen to fetch the Tupperware, a loud clatter interrupted the scene. All eyes turned to my father-in-law, who was clutching his stomach in pain despite not having started his meal. In a panic, my mother-in-law asked what happened, and he, in agony, replied, "My stomach hurts so much I can't bear it." The cause of his suffering remained unclear, adding another layer of tension to the already tumultuous dinner. I had only taken a few nibbles from the kitchen before the gathering, and suddenly my father-in-law collapsed weakly. Disbelief struck me as my mother-in-law, panicked, exclaimed, "You must be joking. That was something I made to feed Alice." "Wait, this is not the time to think about that. Call an ambulance." Without hesitation, she dialed for an ambulance and rushed to the hospital with my father-in-law. We all stood frozen, staring, processing the unexpected turn of events. However, her earlier words lingered in my mind, the revelation that what my father-in-law had snacked on was intended for me. It implied there might be something wrong with that particular dish. Driven by concern, I headed to the kitchen, a place my mother-in-law had always kept me away from. There, I discovered something that left me in shock, finally understanding why I would fall ill and why my father-in-law had collapsed. The realization that she would do something like this struck me as utterly absurd. Reeling from the revelation, I knew I had to decide how to handle this betrayal. Forgiveness wasn't an option. Revenge became a necessity. Each of us drove to the hospital where my father-in-law was taken. After checking in at the reception, we headed straight for the patient room. Inside, we could hear two voices, one unmistakably my mother-in-law's, and the other likely a male doctor. She was being questioned about what had happened. "I'm telling you, I don't know anything. He just suddenly collapsed while we were all enjoying the meals," my mother-in-law insisted. The doctor probed further, asking if he had consumed anything rotten or expired. Evading the questions, my mother-in-law continued to deny any knowledge. Summoning courage, I took a deep breath and knocked on the hospital room door. Flustered, my mother-in-law greeted us. "Oh, Alice and John, you're here too. Your father is okay. Please go home and enjoy dinner with the four of you." However, her somewhat flustered manner and attempt to close the door heightened my suspicions. I seized the moment and asserted, "No, I'd like to talk to you for a bit." Behind me, my husband silently projected his presence, while my brother-in-law and his wife sent sharp, cold glances. Faced with this collective insistence, my mother-in-law couldn't refuse and reluctantly said, "Okay." Allowing us into the room, my father-in-law's facial color appeared to be returning, showing signs of stability. However, the exact cause remained undetermined. Though he was still conscious when brought to the hospital, he had been frequently using the bathroom. The doctor explained that he eventually lost consciousness due to dehydration. Attempting to offer an excuse, my mother-in-law forced a smile, saying, "Well, your father is getting old, and he drinks beer every day." Her attempt at justification seemed feeble, and realizing that neither the doctor nor we were convinced, she fell silent, closing her mouth. I looked at my mother-in-law with a stern gaze, took evidence out of my bag, and presented it to her. As she observed the contents, her eyes widened, and she broke into a cold sweat, visibly confused. "Mother-in-law, isn't this a laxative? I found some powdered laxatives in the kitchen. What's this about?" I inquired calmly, but she remained silent. The doctor, examining the laxatives, seemed to understand. "Oh, that would make sense if he had diarrhea without being food poisoned. Generally, intake of laxatives is a possibility," he explained. Subsequent detailed examinations revealed that my father-in-law had indeed ingested a significant amount of laxatives. The final diagnosis pointed to the laxatives making his intestines hyperactive, causing repeated abdominal pain, diarrhea, and ultimately dehydration. Cornered and unable to make excuses any longer, my mother-in-law hesitated before finally saying, "Wait. At first, I only expected Alice to get a little sick. But because Alice was fine, I gradually increased the amount of laxatives." The confession laid bare the motive for her actions, a sense of loss over her perceived detachment of her beloved eldest son from her. Starting with a small amount of laxatives out of spite, she admitted to progressively escalating the dosage, ultimately reaching a point where it caused a person to collapse. My surprise was impossible to conceal as I confronted my mother-in-law, stating, "What you've done is just crazy. You may not know this, but I've been to the hospital multiple times for IVs due to unexplained symptoms. Despite this, I can't understand why you would attempt to mix in such a huge amount of laxatives. Unable to find room for argument after having her mistake pointed out, my mother-in-law hung her head in frustration. A series of criticisms followed from her sons. "Mom, no matter the circumstances, this can't be forgiven. It just so happens that Alice didn't respond that sensitively to the laxatives." "But what you've done is the same as a crime," my husband exclaimed. His words were echoed by my brother-in-law, who expressed, "I thought it was unthinkable, but were you trying to do the same thing to my wife?" Thinking about it that way is really scary. He pulled his wife closer, throwing a stern gaze at his mother. The doctor intervened, emphasizing, "Medication should be used in the proper amounts and methods, as your son said." Luckily, your daughter-in-law's symptoms were mild, but your husband had no resistance to laxatives, thus resulting in this severe reaction. Unable to bear the criticism, my mother-in-law, despite her age, began to cry like a small child. From the bed, a voice was heard, my father-in-law, who had regained consciousness. He exclaimed, "How could you do such a terrible thing?" Crying, my mother-in-law grasped his hand, apologizing, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." However, he forcefully shook off her hand. Frozen in place, shocked by the unfolding events, my mother-in-law witnessed my father-in-law letting out a deep sigh. He continued, "Even if you didn't intend to hurt me, it's a fact that you've caused Alice to suffer a lot. That's not right. It's a shameful act as a human being." In response to his words, my mother-in-law begged for forgiveness, clinging to him. She turned to me, apologizing for her actions and pledging never to repeat such behavior. Seeking my forgiveness, she expressed hope that my husband and the boys would also be convinced. Witnessing this emotional scene, I found myself torn between the desire for retribution and the possibility of forgiveness. I cynically thought it must be a performance, and she wasn't genuinely remorseful about what she had done to me, so I smirked. "Ah, what are you talking about? I'm not even considering forgiving you now after all I've been through," I asserted. In solidarity, my husband stood beside me and added, "Mother, stay away from Alice. I can no longer think of someone who hurt my beloved wife as family." The declaration stunned my mother-in-law, causing her to collapse to her knees, rejected as family by her own son. Observing the scene, my brother-in-law nodded and stated firmly, "I can't imagine living with someone who could potentially harm my wife. I have no intention of you being my family anymore." His words echoed an unanimous sentiment against her. As my mother-in-law continued to beg for forgiveness, broken down in tears, no one uttered a word. Everyone simply looked down at her, realizing that her selfish jealousy had caused this situation. Desperate for support, she turned to my father-in-law, seemingly forgetting he had already rejected her. Sobbing, she implored, "What about you? You won't abandon me, your wife, will you?" However, my father-in-law retorted, "What of it? I can't stay with someone who commits such inhumane acts anymore. I want a divorce." Crushed by his words, my mother-in-law was left devastated. Agreeing with my husband's suggestion to let my father-in-law rest, we bid farewell to him and exited the hospital room. While waiting for my husband to retrieve the car at the entrance, my mother-in-law, panting, suddenly ran towards us. "Begging you, Alice, please forgive me," she pleaded. Looking at her tear-streaked and snotty face, I responded, "I have no reason to risk my life to be with you, mother-in-law. If I forgive you now, I don't think it will truly be for your benefit." I responded coldly to my mother-in-law, and just as I finished speaking, my husband arrived in the car. We got in, and through the window, I told my mother-in-law, "This is goodbye. We will likely never meet again. Take care." Her response to my cold words was silence. She watched us leave, her hand brushing against her sleeve, murmuring something as if in prayer while looking up at the sky. True to my father-in-law's declaration, he divorced and moved out. In the aftermath, my husband and brother-in-law severed ties with their mother. Previously, my father-in-law had been the leaseholder and paid the rent for the apartment. However, since he left after the divorce, I had to start paying the rent myself. My mother-in-law, having been a housewife all her life, struggled to figure out how to earn a living. Despite trying to make ends meet with the money she received from the property division in the divorce, it quickly ran out. Attempts to charge for her cooking classes and outreach for various work opportunities failed, with the news of the incident spreading and leaving her with no students. Consequently, she couldn't pay the rent, was evicted from her home, and only then did she grasp the harshness of reality. Now homeless, my mother-in-law began looking for work, facing the difficulties of life without a place to live. This, as people say, is karma. Shortly after being released from my unexplained illness, I found out that I was pregnant. My husband and father-in-law, despite the divorce, remained in contact. Upon hearing about my pregnancy, my father-in-law was overjoyed, even more so than we were. He had already prepared a stroller and car seat for us, a gesture that truly felt like a blessing. Discovering a playful side to my previously silent father-in-law, I am filled with joy as a family member. What's more, my brother-in-law and his wife had twins, unexpectedly expanding our family. Our lives became more lively, and I am genuinely looking forward to our new life with our new family members and the fresh days ahead.
Long time no see. How have you been? Well, my mom, who I haven't spoken to in a long time, and my husband came to my dad's funeral. You've got a lot of nerve coming here after everything you've done, I said to her sarcastically. She didn't react at all to my comment. Well, it's my husband's funeral. Of course I'm going to be here. I came for the inheritance, she said. I couldn't stop laughing at what she said. I'm afraid there's no inheritance for you though, I told her. My name is Kate, and I'm a 32-year-old office worker. I've been married to my husband Jacob for 2 years. We first got to know each other at work because we were both in charge of the same client. As we met more often, we became closer and eventually he confessed his feelings to me. That's when we officially started dating. At first, I was hesitant to go out with him because he is 6 years younger than me. Are you sure you want an old lady like me as your girlfriend? I asked him. He looked straight into my eyes and said, I don't care about age. I love you, Kate. I was touched by his straightforward words and fell for him. Our relationship progressed smoothly from there, and he eventually proposed to me. We immediately went to meet his parents. They were very kind and welcomed me with open arms. They were cheerful and positive, just like Jacob, and I liked them right away. Next, we visited my family home, and I introduced him to my parents. Oh, he's such a young boy. But he's very polite and pleasant, isn't he? My parents liked him immediately. Jacob also said, Your parents are very kind. They're great. He had a positive attitude about my parents, and we got married without any issues. After getting married, we both continued working and shared the house chores. Kate, your cooking is really delicious, he often said. Really? That makes me happy. Did your mother teach you how to cook? No, I learned it myself. My mom isn't much of a cook. She was more particular about things like salads and oils. Oh, really? So she's a health guru, huh? Well, she used to be a model. What, really? Did I forget to mention that? She was a teen model from high school until she was about 19. Then, at 19, she got pregnant and married my dad. She took a break from modeling for a while. But once I started elementary school, she went back to modeling and did it for about 10 years. Whoa, I had no idea. I always thought she was very beautiful, but now it makes sense if she was a model. You should tell her yourself next time. I'm sure she'd love to hear it. Okay, let's plan to visit your parents' house next time. Sounds good. Let's do it on our next day off. My husband always made an effort to visit my parents, which I really appreciated. Thanks to him, I can see my parents regularly. Our marriage was going well in that respect. However, something terrible happened. My dad was in an accident and has been in a wheelchair since then. Kate, can you come again today? I have a caregiver during the day, but it's tough taking care of him all alone at night. I understand. Sure, I'll come over after work. I was really worried about my dad, and honestly, I was concerned about leaving my mom, who isn't great with housework, to handle everything on her own. I told my husband I would go help after work. To my surprise, he offered to pick me up and go with me to my parents' house. Thank you, Jacob. You're a lifesaver. Don't mention it. Your parents need us right now, so we'll be there. At that moment, I felt like my husband was an angel sent from above. Ah, Kate, I'm glad you're here. And thank you so much for coming, Jacob. I'm sorry for the trouble. No problem at all. Please don't worry about it. Where's Dad? He's sleeping in his room right now, but I think he'll need to use the bathroom soon. Okay, I'll go check on him. Thank you. Is there anything else I can do to help? There are some heavy things I need help carrying. Ever since my husband started using his wheelchair, there's been no one here to lift heavy stuff. Oh, I understand. That makes sense. I'll take care of it. My husband was happy to help my mom with her request. I was really glad he came along. Dad, you're awake. Thanks for coming, Kate. I heard your voices and woke up. I see. Do you need to use the restroom? I can help you get there. Oh, I think I'll take you up on that. I'm really sorry for the trouble. Don't worry about it. I was able to go to college because of you. It's my turn to help you now. Thank you, Kate. After taking care of Dad, my husband and I went back home together. When we arrived, my husband had something to suggest. Hey, how do you feel about us moving in with your parents? What? Well, honestly, it must be difficult for your mom and dad to live alone in their current situation. Yeah, but are you okay with that? They aren't your parents, you know. Won't you feel stressed? Not at all. Your parents are really kind, so I have no problem living with them. Jacob. I was deeply grateful for my husband's suggestion. Truthfully, I have been thinking the same thing. There's a 15-year age gap between my mom and dad. Dad was a CEO and met mom at a party for wealthy people. He fell in love with her beauty at first sight, and that's how our family began. They married when mom became pregnant with me. Since mom isn't good at housework, her mother and my grandmother often came over to cook and clean for us. I remember watching my grandmother cook when I was little. Mom had a unique view. She believed that as long as she was beautiful, she didn't need to do anything else, so she rarely did housework. I started living on my own when I went to university, so I learned how to do housework and cook. I can manage most things by myself, but mom wasn't able to do much, so she struggled to take care of dad alone. That's why I wanted to be there for dad and support him as much as possible. There's another reason why I want us to live together. What? What is it? Actually, I'm pregnant. Wait, really? Yeah. Seriously, I'm going to be a dad. That's right. In that case, it makes even more sense to live at your parents' house. I think you're right. I'll call my mom right away. When I talked to my mom, she thought it would be a big help and agreed to let us move in. So my husband and I moved into my parents' house and started living together there. I decided to focus on being a full-time homemaker while taking care of my dad at home. I prepared well for the birth of our baby. If anything came up, my mom would take me to the hospital, and even though she couldn't cook much, she would buy whatever I needed from the store. That alone was a huge help, and it was comforting to be back home. My husband seemed to get along well with my parents. He would talk to my dad about his health and have enjoyable conversations with my mom. Seeing this, I felt reassured that marrying him was the right decision. Jacob, could you come with me to the store? There seemed to be cheaper ingredients at a supermarket a bit further away today, so I thought we could drive there. Sure, I'll take care of it. My husband and mom bonded like they were truly family, often going shopping together on weekends. As my belly grew with the baby, it became harder for me to go out, so I was grateful they took the initiative to handle the shopping. Time passed, and I gave birth to our baby without complications, a healthy baby boy. Our family was overjoyed and celebrated the birth of our son with us. Since we have a boy, he might be able to take over my dad's company in the future, I thought. I was looking forward to a lively and even more enjoyable life with my family. That's what I thought, but soon I would face an unbelievable situation. It happened on a day when I was planning to take my son shopping for baby items. The store I wanted to visit was a bit far from home, so I decided to drive there myself. Instead of explaining what I needed to my husband and risking him getting the wrong things, I thought it would be faster if I went alone. So I asked my husband to stay with my dad and set off for the store. However, about 10 minutes into my drive, I realized I had forgotten my wallet. I hurriedly turned the car around and headed back home. As I was about to go upstairs to retrieve my wallet from my room, I heard a strange noise coming from my mom's room. Currently, my dad, who uses a wheelchair, stays in a room on the first floor of my parents' house, while my husband, mom, and I have our rooms upstairs on the second floor. On this particular day, neither my husband nor my mom were in the living room on the first floor. I had a sinking feeling something was wrong. Quietly, I approached my mom's room. I heard a creaking noise and heavy breathing, and I instantly knew what was happening. I started recording on my phone and cautiously opened the door. "What are you both doing?" "Whoa." Both my mom and my husband were surprised, caught naked in bed together. They hurriedly began dressing. "What is this? Are you having an affair?" When I confronted them, they were shameless. "Yes, we are. But well, it can't be helped. Jacob prefers me after all," my mom said. "Sorry, Kate, your mother is just more attractive," my husband added. "Excuse me?" It seems my husband has a preference for older women, which he didn't mind when we were dating. In fact, he found the age gap appealing. Do you think this can be forgiven? Well, it is what it is. Whether we're forgiven or not doesn't concern us. We're going to move out and be together. So you're saying we're getting divorced? Yes, that's right. Then I'll prepare the divorce papers immediately. I remained surprisingly calm as we continued the conversation. I knew I had to stay strong for my dad, who needed care, and my newborn son. "So, Mom, you're divorcing Dad, right? I'll bring the divorce papers for you too." To my surprise, my mom made a shocking statement. "I'm not getting a divorce." "What?" "I'm not divorcing your dad, but I am leaving this house." "Wait, what? This isn't something to joke about." "I'm serious. I'm not leaving until I get my fair share of the assets in this house." "That's right. Not until your dad passes away." "What are you saying?" "I'm not leaving until I secure his inheritance." I was stunned. My mom was refusing to divorce my dad so she could ensure she received his inheritance. If they divorced, she'd only get a portion of it. "How could you?" I said, my fists clenched in anger as I stared at my mom. "I'm just choosing what benefits me the most. Age doesn't matter to me. I'll take all the money I can get and find someone younger and better," she replied, completely callous. "Jacob, I'm divorcing you, no matter what." "Yeah, sure, but depending on the circumstances, I might refuse." "What? What circumstances?" "That you or your dad agree to your mom's condition of not divorcing your dad." "What?" "Since it's you, Kate, you might find a way to make this work, right? So if we're getting divorced, I want you to promise that your mom and dad stay married." "You must be joking. I can't agree to those terms." "Then I won't divorce either, and I won't pay child support." "You can't do that." "Well, what will you choose?" My husband and mom looked smugly satisfied. Regardless, I knew I had to talk to my dad about this. I couldn't make a decision without considering his feelings, so I rushed down to the first floor. It seemed my dad was awake and had overheard everything. "Kate, don't worry about me. Go ahead and divorce him." "But, Dad, that means you and Mom." "Don't worry about me. You need to divorce that man right away," my dad said, looking directly into my eyes. He must have had a plan of his own. With that in mind, I decided to follow my dad's advice and agree to the terms my husband proposed for the divorce. My husband and my mother laughed mockingly and said, "Let us know when Dad dies, okay?" Then they left. I was consumed with anger, feeling like I was losing my mind, but it was my dad who was truly suffering. "I'm sorry, Dad. Jacob did something unforgivable." "Don't worry about it. They'll soon face their own reckoning." At first, I didn't fully grasp what my dad meant, but after he explained it, I understood his plan to ensure my mom and Jacob faced consequences for their actions. From then on, I decided to focus on living my life without being weighed down by them. I hired a helper during the day and resumed working. My son grew up healthy, and I became more adept at caring for my dad. He cherished spending time with his grandchild, and I hoped my son would inherit his kindness. Time passed swiftly. 3 years flew by in the blink of an eye. Recently, my dad's health declined, and he had to be hospitalized. Sadly, his health didn't improve, and he passed away. I had mentally prepared for this moment, so I was surprisingly calm as I immediately began organizing his funeral. My dad was dearly loved, and many people attended his funeral. However, among the attendees, I came face to face with the last people I wanted to see. A long time no see. How have you been? I arrived as I said I would, only to find my mom and my ex-husband standing there. What are you doing here? I came to fulfill my promise. They had both come to my dad's funeral. How dare you show your faces here after what you've done? Kate, attraction between men and women is often instinctual, so it's beyond reason. Those drawn to each other can't always help it. She didn't seem fazed by my sarcastic remarks. Then why are you at my dad's funeral? You could have stayed with him alone. Well, it's my husband's funeral, so it's only natural to attend. And as I mentioned before, I have a promise to fulfill. I'm here to claim my inheritance. Now tell me how much I'm getting. I couldn't help but laugh at my mom's boldness. I'm sorry, but there's no inheritance for you. What? What do you mean? She's entitled to a share of the estate. I'm sorry, but my mom and dad are already divorced. What? I never agreed to a divorce. Have you forgotten that you once handed my dad divorce papers? He kept them for a moment like this. After you both left, my dad filed for divorce. You're no longer married to my dad, which means you're not entitled to his inheritance. As I said this, the color drained from my mom and ex-husband's faces. No, you're lying. That can't be. Now that you understand, could you please leave? You understand the situation, right? Many people who respected my dad began to gather around us. They all condemned the two who had betrayed and hurt my dad. Realizing the gravity of the situation, my mom and ex-husband promptly left the funeral. According to reports, they were living a lavish lifestyle that far exceeded my ex-husband's income. It appears they even depleted my mom's savings, resorted to taking out loans, and were in dire financial straits when they learned of my dad's passing. They had hoped to use his inheritance to clear their debts, but their hopes were dashed when they received nothing. Now, their whereabouts are unknown, and I had chosen not to concern myself with it. On the other hand, I took on a role at my dad's company a few years back and eventually became the CEO before his passing. Now, I'm dedicated to safeguarding his legacy as CEO while also raising my cherished son. I envision him possibly taking over the company one day, but if he pursues other aspirations, I'll wholeheartedly support his dreams. For now, I cherish watching my young and adorable son grow. Narrator's comment: cheating with your wife's mother. That's about as low as it gets, isn't it? Even if someone has a preference for older partners, that's truly unforgivable. Kate's mother also displays the worst kind of behavior. Perhaps those at the lowest moral levels are naturally drawn to each other, but it's satisfying to see that their actions led them into financial ruin. Kate should continue excelling as CEO and enjoy happy days with her son. My husband's estate, valued at $80 million along with this house, will be inherited by me as we have no children. My sister-in-law's demeanor is always a challenge to contend with. My name is Emma, a 45-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are blessed with 2 sons, one a senior and the other a sophomore in high school. The elder one is currently preparing for his college entrance exams, aspiring to follow his passion for law. His ambition was ignited at a tender age, likely influenced by my brother Oliver, who is a seasoned lawyer. A few years back, Oliver established his own law firm, which my eldest son admires greatly. From his early years, my son demonstrated a knack for academic excellence, a trait that Oliver wholeheartedly encouraged upon learning of his nephew's aspirations. Whenever they meet, my son reaffirms his goal to emulate his uncle's legal career, to which Oliver responds with a warm chuckle, urging him to swiftly pursue his dreams and walk in his footsteps. When my brother, who was married but childless, came to visit, he delighted in playing with my sons and showering them with affection. His wife, a woman a decade his junior, kept her distance from our family, rarely gracing our home with her presence. As a result, our interactions with her were few and far between. My brother and I endured the loss of our parents at a young age, leading him to step into a parental role when I was on the brink of marriage. Soon after my wedding, he followed suit and tied the knot himself. My husband and I felt reassured when we learned of my brother's intention to marry a younger woman. However, upon meeting his fiancée, I was taken aback by her perpetually sullen demeanor. We had anticipated joyous exchanges, considering she was about to marry into our family, yet her expression remained persistently glum as she regarded us. In the presence of my brother and his fiancée, I offered a superficial compliment, saying, "You two make a great pair." Yet my true sentiments emerged only in the quiet moments at home with my husband. I couldn't shake off the curiosity about why she seemed so discontented. As their marriage was sealed, my husband echoed my concerns, remarking with a hint of worry, "She didn't seem particularly joyful as a bride. It's a bit concerning, isn't it?" Shortly before their wedding, my brother tied the knot with his 10 years younger fiancée. To celebrate my husband, our children, and I paid them a visit at their newly acquired house. The grandeur of the place left me in awe, a testament to my brother's success as a law firm owner. However, the absence of my sister-in-law raised eyebrows. In jest, my husband quipped to my brother, "Has your wife already abandoned ship?" Though meant in good humor, the tension in my brother's reaction left us both uneasy. According to him, whenever there's trouble, his wife retreats to her parents' home. Today, she stayed over to celebrate her mother's birthday. My husband's expression drooped, perhaps regretting his attempt at humor. Then, out of the blue, my brother posed a serious question with a poker face. "If I were ever unable to have children, would you consider letting me adopt one of yours?" I initially brushed it off as a jest, but my brother's earnest demeanor suggested otherwise. Stunned by the unexpected proposal, I found myself unable to respond, while my husband, with a chuckle, replied, "Who knows what the future holds? Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. If you're serious, and if our children are comfortable with it, we can discuss it then." Though my husband seemed to take it lightly, I couldn't shake off the underlying concerns about both the adoption suggestion and the strained relationship between my brother and his wife. It wasn't my place to interfere in their marital issues, but I couldn't help but worry. Subsequently, whether it was our visits to my brother's home or his visits to ours, he always came alone. His wife was conspicuously absent, further fueling my apprehensions. My brother never brought up his wife, so I refrained from prying into their relationship. After over a decade of marriage, her presence faded into obscurity in my mind. This year, as my eldest son's acceptance into his dream law school was celebrated at our house, my brother broached the topic of adoption once again. "Just as I mentioned before, would you consider allowing me to adopt one of your children?" he inquired. Their inability to conceive led him to revisit the idea. The last time we discussed it, they were newlyweds, so there was no urgency. Yet this time, my brother's tone conveyed seriousness. Despite the weight of the proposal, my husband's response was swift and nonchalant. "Would you prefer our eldest son, considering his ambition to become a lawyer?" he quipped. While my husband's manner seemed casual, I remained cautious, mindful of the profound impact such a decision would have on our sons' lives. Even though my brother, their uncle, would be adopting them, I couldn't shake the worry about my sister-in-law's potential treatment of my sons, who wouldn't be her own flesh and blood. Seeking reassurance, I cautiously asked my brother, "Is your wife on board with the adoption?" His response, accompanied by a wry smile, was somewhat comforting. "Don't fret over her. We've discussed it already," he assured me. While I felt relieved knowing they had addressed the matter, I couldn't reach a decision immediately. Instead, I resolved to involve my sons in the discussion and let them weigh in, considering they were already in high school and capable of making their own choices. We left the matter unresolved that day, but a few days later, I received an urgent call from my brother's lawyer's office. They informed me that he had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Frantically, I made my way there, only to find the law firm's staff anxiously awaiting news. It appeared my brother had suffered a stroke at work and was now unconscious. Once I arrived, the law firm staff departed, leaving me to confront the worrying situation alone. The law firm staff also mentioned they couldn't reach my sister-in-law. I tried calling the landline, but received no answer, and I didn't have her cell phone number. Eventually, my husband and younger son arrived, but still there was no luck reaching her. It was my younger son who stumbled upon a smartphone amidst my brother's belongings. With some effort, we managed to unlock it and began searching for her contact details. When she finally picked up the call from that phone, her response was laced with anger. "I warned you not to call again. I'll take legal action," she snapped. Attempting to convey urgency amidst her tirade, I interjected, "It's Emma, Oliver's sister. My brother has collapsed and is in the hospital." Her tone softened upon realizing it was me on the line. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I mistook you for Oliver. You said he collapsed?" she inquired. After updating her on my brother's condition and the hospital he was admitted to, her response took a surprisingly casual turn. "I'm unable to come to the hospital right now due to prior commitments. Please keep me informed," she requested before abruptly ending the call. I couldn't help but wonder if my sister-in-law had more pressing matters to attend to, especially considering her husband's illness. With the realization that she wouldn't be of any assistance, we resolved to care for my brother ourselves. Since my eldest son had completed his university entrance exams and was spending most of his time at home, he took on the responsibility of visiting my brother daily on my behalf. Despite our efforts, my brother remained unconscious and in critical condition. However, my sister-in-law never reached out or made an appearance at the hospital. Nearly a week after my brother was admitted, I made another attempt to contact her. This time, she answered the phone promptly, her tone oddly cheerful. "What's the matter? Is he dead?" she exclaimed, lacking any semblance of empathy. Struggling to contain my anger, I responded calmly, "He's still alive. Why haven't you visited him at the hospital?" Her response, dripping with indifference, only fueled my frustration. "I'm neither a doctor nor a miracle worker. There's nothing I can do for his recovery," she retorted dismissively. Her callous demeanor pushed me over the edge and I hung up the phone, unable to suppress my growing rage. Suspicions began to brew within me regarding my brother's motives for wanting to adopt one of my sons. It dawned on me that perhaps he had resigned himself to the idea of not having children with his wife, indicating possible discord in their marriage. Curiosity led me to inquire about how they met after their marriage was finalized, to which my brother revealed they had been introduced through a marriage counseling agency. The revelation stirred a mix of emotions within me, especially the notion that my sister-in-law may have married my brother solely for the security of his profession as a lawyer and the promise of a comfortable life. This thought fueled my indignation further, but when I confided in my husband, his response cut deeper. If Oliver were to pass away in his current state, his wife would inherit the entire estate given their lack of children, he remarked callously. As my brother joined us to celebrate my eldest son's recent achievements and broached the topic of adoption, I couldn't shake the suspicion that perhaps his interest stemmed from considerations of inheritance rather than genuine familial intentions. I wish I could have reached a decision then and there, but the situation left me feeling powerless. After my brother's departure that day, I casually broached the topic with my two sons. To my surprise, my younger son expressed eagerness to be adopted, viewing it as a ticket to an easier life under Oliver's wing. Unlike his older brother, he seemed content to go with the flow, lacking clear aspirations for the future. I had anticipated my eldest son, who admired his brother, to follow suit, but his response caught me off guard. "I don't want to be adopted," he declared firmly. "As the eldest, it's my responsibility to take care of you, Mom, and Dad." His words filled me with pride, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that my eldest son, with his ambition to become a lawyer, was the more suitable candidate for adoption. Although I longed to initiate the adoption process on behalf of my unconscious brother, the circumstances thwarted my efforts. Despite my reluctance to claim any share of my brother's inheritance, I couldn't bear the thought of a single penny falling into the hands of my sister-in-law, who seemed to be eagerly awaiting his demise. I could only hold on to the hope of my brother's recovery, but it never came to fruition. Days later, he passed away, leaving me with the solemn duty of informing my sister-in-law. "My brother has passed away. Can we arrange a funeral?" I conveyed the somber news. To my surprise, her response was oddly cheerful. "You have the final say. Just please don't involve me in any formalities," she replied before abruptly ending the call. Feeling a surge of frustration, I held back my emotions as my husband and I took charge of planning the funeral. With assistance from the law firm's staff, we navigated through the arrangements. While my husband expressed concerns about the firm's future, my brother had already ensured its stability by entrusting its management to a capable individual. Thus, the firm would continue to operate seamlessly as a corporation. At the funeral, the turnout was overwhelming, with countless wreaths brought in to pay respects. The hall overflowed with mourners, a testament to the profound impact my brother had on so many lives. As the funeral unfolded, I found myself once again marveling at the incredible person my brother had been. Alongside me, my son lent a hand in the somber proceedings. However, his mood darkened upon witnessing the notable figures in attendance, presidents of major corporations, politicians, and other dignitaries. "I should have been the one adopted," he lamented bitterly. "I never realized how remarkable he truly was." My husband and I empathized with his sorrow, understanding the weight of his realization. As I fulfilled my role as a pallbearer, no one questioned the absence of my sister-in-law, nor was it brought up in conversation. I couldn't help but wonder if we were the only ones privy to the knowledge of my brother's marriage. They hadn't had a wedding ceremony, instead they simply embarked on a honeymoon. It dawned on me that even our relatives might have been unaware of their marital status. Reflecting on the situation, I couldn't help but harbor regrets. If only they hadn't married, there wouldn't be a need for a wife who failed to show up at her husband's funeral, and I lamented not allowing my brother to adopt my younger son sooner, fearing that she might seize control of my brother's estate with the support of the law firm's staff. The funeral for my brother had concluded, and I extended invitations for everyone to gather at his house for a meal, expressing my gratitude. "Thanks to all of you, my brother will be able to rest in peace," I said, my voice laden with sorrow. As we mourned together, my sister-in-law made a sudden appearance, clad in a flashy pink coat, as if timed to coincide with the conclusion of the funeral. Addressing her with a mix of surprise and suspicion, I asked, "Why have you chosen this moment to come?" With a wide grin on her face, she spoke loudly for all to hear. "As my husband's wife, I inherit his estate, valued at $80 million, along with this house. With no children in the picture, everything belongs to me." Her triumphant declaration prompted laughter from my brother's colleagues, leaving us puzzled by their reaction. My sister-in-law shot them a glare and scolded, "What's so funny? How rude." Her smirk quickly faded when one of the lawyers interjected, "We're aware that you're officially divorced." The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. "You were divorced?" I exclaimed incredulously upon hearing the news the day before my brother's collapse. Glancing at my sister-in-law's visage, I saw a chilling expression etched across her features as she locked eyes with the individuals who had unveiled the truth. As she gritted her teeth, another lawyer interjected, "I've also heard that you were ordered to pay alimony due to the affair that led to the divorce. It's unavoidable." Furious, my sister-in-law directed her glare at the lawyer who spoke, snapping, "I'm not obligated to pay alimony anymore. There's no one left to pay." Her words dripped with disdain, but she was swiftly rebutted by the legal expert. "The right to alimony also transfers upon inheritance, so you'll still owe it to Emma, the sole inheritor." It dawned on me for the first time that I was the sole inheritor of my brother's estate. With their divorce finalized and our parents no longer alive, I was left as the last remaining family member. She seemed to grasp the reality of the situation, her expression morphing into one of horror as she locked eyes with me, prompting me to instinctively step back. Yet her demeanor remained defiant as she resumed her tirade. "Don't I deserve half of the estate now that the divorce is settled?" A lawyer, looking dismayed, interjected, "Didn't Oliver provide you with funds upon the finalization of the divorce?" "I have the receipt certificate." Another lawyer chimed in, "He also acquired a house prior to the marriage, so it isn't subject to property division." I found a sense of satisfaction in witnessing her being lectured by the lawyers. Despite her protestations, she appeared to recall something and chuckled lightly as she continued, "There's still the life insurance. I should be the beneficiary." Her resilience impressed me, navigating through a hostile environment where everyone seemed to be against her. Then, with a smirk, she added, "I changed the beneficiary of Oliver's life insurance to myself." However, the lawyer promptly refuted her claim regarding the life insurance, stating, "Oliver was a resolute individual, so it's likely he made the change upon finalizing the divorce." As I sifted through my brother's belongings, I stumbled upon the life insurance policy, but my sister-in-law caught sight of it. Swiftly, she snatched the document from my grasp, her impatience evident as she scrutinized the beneficiary. However, her demeanor shifted to one of disappointment as she handed the certificate back to me, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It was then that I noticed the beneficiary was me. Realizing her efforts were futile, my sister-in-law blurted out her true sentiments without filter. "I married a lawyer because I thought he was wealthy, but all I got was a pittance, and now I have to pay alimony. It's a colossal mistake." In response, the lawyer's expression hardened as he retorted, "Oliver expressed similar sentiments. He regretted seeking the counsel of a marriage counselor, lamenting the monumental mistake he had made. Although my brother never confided such sentiments to me, his honesty was well known among his colleagues and subordinates. Faced with undeniable facts, my sister-in-law turned on her heel and departed from my brother's house. As time passed, she found herself obligated to pay alimony in installments, despite lacking stable employment. Desperate to fulfill her financial obligations, she hastily sought out employment opportunities. However, her lack of commitment led to a string of short-lived jobs. In a desperate attempt to secure quick wealth, she returned to the marriage counseling agency and set her sights on a wealthy individual. Deceiving him with promises of financial gain through marriage, she exploited his trust and attempted to swindle him. Yet, her scheme unraveled swiftly when the man saw through her deceit and reported her to the authorities. Subsequently, she was arrested for marriage fraud, facing the consequences of her actions. According to a lawyer from my brother's law firm who disclosed the truth, no alimony was ever paid to me. When I consulted the lawyer regarding the situation, I was informed of the recent developments. It was in May when the lawyer relayed the news that my sister-in-law had been apprehended. With her arrest, the likelihood of receiving alimony payments seemed slim in the foreseeable future. However, alimony wasn't my foremost concern. What I truly desired was to witness her facing the consequences of her actions and enduring a fate befitting her deeds. I firmly believe my brother would concur, which is why I wish for thorough police investigation into her other transgressions. I hope she's charged as a felon and brought to justice in court. Meanwhile, my family relocated to a house left behind by my brother, unexpectedly inheriting his property. My husband and sons were overjoyed at the prospect of moving into a spacious house, a stark contrast to our previous cramped apartment. Amidst the excitement, my eldest son, fueled by newfound determination, immersed himself in his law studies. Observing the interactions between his brother's colleagues and subordinates, he felt a strong yearning to pursue a career in law. Though never formally adopted by my brother, I hold on to the hope that he will carry forth my brother's legacy and excel as a lawyer, just as he aspired to be. However, my younger son harbored a sense of disappointment upon learning that I had inherited my brother's entire estate. "I wish I had been adopted by uncle so I could have inherited everything," he confessed candidly. Despite his words carrying a hint of jest, his smile betrayed a hint of genuine longing.
I find myself in a predicament, entangled in a web of familial expectations and financial disputes within my marriage. The notion of inheriting my rightful share seems to be slipping away, overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of wealth by my husband and mother-in-law. In the realm of matrimony, one would assume that an inheritance is a natural entitlement. Yet in my case, it appears to be an elusive right, as both my husband and mother-in-law exhibit an unwavering fixation on money. Their covetous tendencies extend beyond mere possession, venturing into the audacious territory of claiming my late father's hard-earned legacy as their own. The audacity of surrendering my father's amassed wealth to these individuals is inconceivable. Unforgivable, in fact. My resolve strengthens with each passing day, and I am determined not to succumb to their voracious desires. Allow me to introduce myself. S, a 44-year-old navigating the complexities of a 20-year-old marriage. Amidst the delicate balancing act of household responsibilities and a demanding job, my husband John, aged 46, toils away at a supermarket near the station. Our paths crossed during my university years, a chance encounter at the very supermarket where I held a part-time job. Casual dating evolved into marriage at the age of 24, and our union now includes our son, Bill, who recently embarked on his journey into university life this spring. The fabric of my life is woven with fulfilling responsibilities, but a disquieting undercurrent persists: my husband's reckless spending habits. While the right to spend our hard-earned money is undeniable, his unrelenting demands for additional funds, accompanied by a lack of transparency, only served to exacerbate the situation. In the presence of my husband and his parents, financial matters become a battleground. My resistance to their insatiable demands is met with vehement opposition, and the atmosphere becomes charged with tension. My son, Bill, thankfully, shares my sentiments towards his grandparents and ensures his absence whenever they make an appearance. However, a startling revelation from Bill unveils a new layer of turmoil. The revelation of my husband's infidelity, witnessed firsthand by our son, leaves me more disheartened than angry. Bill, advocating for a divorce, echoes my sentiments. Though reassured by my son's support, I decide to confront my husband before taking any drastic steps. As I prepare to address the issue, an unexpected intrusion occurs. My husband and his parents barge into our living room. Seemingly innocuous, their visit takes a turn when my husband proposes an extravagant trip to Hawaii, accompanied by a demand for a substantial sum of $5,000. Frustration reaches its peak, prompting me to confront them not only about their financial expectations, but also about my husband's infidelity. The room falls silent, and I brace myself for the repercussions of this revelation. Prepared to confront my husband as planned, I confronted him about the allegations of infidelity. His initial response was one of denial and confusion, questioning the need for proof and asserting his innocence. I pointed out that someone had witnessed him entering a hotel with another woman, to which he responded by challenging the credibility of the observer. Frustrated, I hesitated, not wanting my anger to be directed at our son, Bill, who had shared the unsettling revelation. Astonishingly, my mother-in-law dismissed the seriousness of the accusation, suggesting that forgiving a cheat or two is normal for men. I found it incredulous that a woman herself could condone such behavior. However, the urgency shifted to their demand for money for a Hawaii trip, a distraction my husband readily embraced, leaving the matter of his infidelity unresolved. Exasperated with these constant financial disputes and moral insensitivity, I decided that it was time to sever ties. Calmly, I announced that we were getting a divorce. In response, my husband threatened to claim my parents' mansion as part of the property division if the separation proceeded. As tensions escalated during our argument, my cell phone rang, interrupting the heated exchange. It was my uncle, my father's brother, bearing unsettling news. My father had collapsed, lost consciousness, and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Urgently summoned to the hospital, I explained the situation to my husband and his parents before departing. Upon arriving at the hospital, I discovered that my father was stable but not in optimal condition. My father, age 67, had dedicated his life to the family business, overcoming initial challenges to provide a comfortable life for us. The news of his sudden health crisis left me emotionally shaken, prompting me to reflect on his irreplaceable role in my life. Days later, my father regained consciousness, alleviating some concerns. Visiting him with Bill, we shared a moment of relief and concern. However, the doctor's subsequent call revealed the severity of my father's condition, exacerbated by years of overwork. In the following days, my father passed away, and grief enveloped me. Throughout this difficult time, Bill remained a steadfast source of support. As an only child, I shouldered the responsibility of funeral preparations, and my husband's indifference only heightened my emotional burden. At the funeral, my in-laws made an appearance, expressing admiration for the family home and insensitive curiosity about its value. In the aftermath of the memorial services, while attempting to come to terms with my father's passing, my in-laws, father-in-law, and mother-in-law made a sudden visit. Their focus, however, remained on the materialistic aspects, with my mother-in-law fixating on the grandeur of the house and my father-in-law probing into its potential value. Their departure, seemingly content with their financial inquiries, left me speechless. As I began to cope with the grieving process and put away funeral clothes at home, a new wave of confusion emerged. My parents were on their way over, and I was left wondering about the purpose of their unexpected visit. My initial apprehension deepened as I awaited the arrival of my parents anticipating another discussion veering towards financial matters. In a solemn attempt to understand their motives, I resolved to engage in conversation upon their arrival. As they entered, my in-laws wore satisfied grins, taking their places on the sofa. The atmosphere tensed when my husband abruptly suggested we move from our spacious house, proposing that his parents join us in our new abode. Baffled by this sudden proposition, I reiterated my intention to proceed with the divorce, a decision fueled by my commitment to address my late father's affairs. However, my husband, dismissing the notion of infidelity and divorce, casually declared his intent to share everything between spouses. This included the inheritance, a claim he justified as his right as a husband. Their audacious assumption that all the inheritance belonged to them infuriated me, and their whimsical discussions about room preferences in a new mansion only fueled my frustration. Determined to thwart their plans and protect the legacy my father had worked hard to build, I vowed never to let them have their way. The audacity of my husband and his parents, treating my father's house and wealth as if it were rightfully theirs, had pushed my patience beyond its limits. A few days later, a call from my uncle brought a brief respite. His words of comfort and support reassured me that I had done well amidst the challenges. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn when my uncle expressed a pressing need to meet and share crucial information. Intrigued and apprehensive, I agreed to meet him that night. As my uncle disclosed shocking revelations about my husband and in-laws, I found myself grappling with the gravity of the situation. Determined to seek guidance, I confided in my uncle, sharing the preposterous demands and claims made by my husband and in-laws. My uncle, furious at their audacity, assured me that he would handle the situation. Intrigued by my uncle's plan, I eagerly met with him again the following day, this time accompanied by Bill. The plan unfolded, aiming to enlighten Bill about his father and grandparents and prepare him for the challenging road ahead. Braced for the confrontation, I summoned my in-laws to our house, bringing together the 6 of us, my husband, Bill, and the 3 of them. The discussion centered around the prospect of all 6 of us living in my family home. The proposal caught them off guard, and after confirming their seriousness, my mother-in-law enthusiastically endorsed the idea, expressing eagerness to live in what she deemed a dreamlike mansion. The elation, however, was short-lived. Reality struck when my father-in-law reminded us of the cancellation fee for their previously planned trip, insisting on reimbursement. Appalled by their audacious demands, I realized the depth of their selfishness. Unfazed, my mother-in-law reassured us that they would recoup the money soon enough, dismissing the urgency of the situation. Accustomed to my husband and in-laws' relentless pursuit of money, I had grown somewhat immune to their schemes. However, Bill, unaccustomed to their blatant money-grabbing tendencies, appeared visibly upset and angered by their audacity. In an attempt to soothe him, I gently patted Bill's shoulder, assuring him that we would handle the situation. As the conversation revolved around the proposed move into my family home, I decided to play along, knowing well that their assumptions were far from reality. John, my husband, questioned the logistics of the move, displaying an unusual sharpness in his tone. Attempting to deflect the tension, I explained that Bill and I would go ahead to prepare the house, emphasizing that it was a considerable task requiring early action. However, John's skepticism lingered, and he questioned Bill's ability to handle household tasks, especially since he was still a student. I managed to navigate the conversation by suggesting that Bill could manage his responsibilities, though John continued to resist over trivial matters. Despite his resistance, my mother-in-law remained in good spirits, seemingly oblivious to the underlying tension. The conversation inadvertently shifted towards the size of the mansion and the number of rooms, with my mother-in-law expressing excitement. Seizing the opportunity, I assured them that they could choose their rooms first and even proposed a gradual process of tidying up, considering my work schedule. My calculated responses allowed me to temporarily deflect their expectations, leaving them satisfied with their perceived victory. In my mind, I harbored a plan to undermine their assumptions and bring them down from their lofty expectations. The moving day was set a month later, and I eagerly anticipated the final showdown. On the decisive day, my husband and in-laws arrived with a moving truck, expecting to take possession of what they believed to be their new home. Bill and I awaited them in front of the entrance. Ignoring my husband's attempt at humor, I observed the sparkles of excitement in my in-laws' eyes. Little did they know that the impending revelation would shatter their illusions. As my husband made light of the situation, the gate opened, and my uncle, my father's brother, emerged from the house. Silent and imposing, my uncle confronted them, leaving my husband and in-laws puzzled. It became evident that my husband barely remembered my uncle from the funeral. Setting the record straight, my uncle asserted his ownership of the house and clarified the inheritance distribution. The shock on my husband and in-laws' faces grew as they realized the gravity of their misconceptions. Despite my uncle's assertive explanation, my husband remained calm, seemingly attempting to move past the confrontation. In a sudden turn of events, Bill intervened, accusing his father of infidelity. The revelation left my husband shocked and exposed, unable to hide from the truth his son had uncovered. Observing my father entering a hotel with another woman confirmed my suspicions of his infidelity. However, when confronted, he adamantly denied the accusations, refusing to admit to his transgressions. In response, Bill, my son, urged his father to leave our lives, emphasizing the impact of his actions on our family. Despite this plea, my in-laws remained fixated on financial gains, insisting on a proper property division if a divorce were to proceed. My in-laws boldly declared that they had relinquished their apartment and quit their jobs to partake in a life of leisure in the assumed family mansion. Their presumptuous demands left me astounded, especially when they revealed that both my husband and father-in-law had quit their jobs. I questioned their rationale, bewildered by their abrupt decisions and the apparent reliance on my father's inheritance. In response to their audacious claims, I asserted my rightful inheritance as my father's child, anticipating a substantial property division. To my relief, my uncle, a lawyer, intervened to handle the legal proceedings. He exposed my husband's infidelity, supported by evidence gathered during a month-long investigation. The revelation left my husband and in-laws stunned, and they finally began to comprehend the severity of the situation. With my uncle's guidance, I firmly informed them to handle all matters through legal channels and requested they never show their faces to me again. Despite a momentary glare from my husband, they left, and I expressed my gratitude to my uncle for his invaluable support. Following the legal proceedings, Bill and I moved into the family home, fulfilling my father's and grandfather's wishes, grateful for the opportunity to live in a house filled with memories. I thanked my uncle for the life-changing experience. Bill, having learned from his uncle's guidance, dedicated himself to his studies, aspiring to become a successful lawyer. My ex-husband and his parents found themselves in a challenging situation, residing in an old apartment and struggling to secure new employment. The consequences of their actions began to unravel as my ex-husband reached out for financial assistance. However, having severed all ties, I refused to lend him money, enforcing the newfound estrangement. In the aftermath, my ex-husband's life took an unexpected turn. He resorted to part-time and day jobs, attempting to navigate the consequences of his choices. Their elaborate plan to borrow money for a non-existent luxury trip further exposed the depths of their deception. Grateful for the weight lifted off my shoulders, I focused on my career, with the immediate goal of witnessing Bill successfully graduate from college. Hello, I am a single woman in my 60s. Since childhood, I held on to the belief in a reciprocal philosophy, thinking that my hard work and dedication would be met with equal effort in return. This mindset extended to my relationships, where I believed treating others kindly would result in receiving kindness in return. Even after marriage, I continued to hold this belief, assuming that by being considerate to my husband, he would reciprocate. In today's world, women aren't expected to sacrifice as much. But during my era, societal expectations were different. I willingly made sacrifices for my husband and children, confident that my efforts would contribute to future happiness. However, my marriage and family life didn't unfold as expected. Despite my early mornings and diligent work for the family, complaints and mistakes overshadowed appreciation. At that time, no one mandated that I live this way. I was an ordinary person who married a coworker 4 years my senior due to societal expectations. Despite the societal norms for married women to quit their jobs, I became a full-time housewife after giving birth to my daughter. I had no regrets. I believed it was a natural course of action for family life. Though my life wasn't glamorous like TV dramas, it felt easy and stable. Around my daughter's 9th grade, tragedy struck when my mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack. While mourning her loss, I discovered my husband's affair. In the midst of my grief, he found joy elsewhere, becoming uncaring and eventually demanding a divorce. Despite my determination to avoid divorce, my husband's behavior became unbearable. Divorce wasn't as socially acceptable back then, and despite an irresponsible and unkind husband, I resisted the idea. Looking back, I realized my naivety, but more was at stake. My daughter, witnessing the turmoil, felt the impact. Despite my refusal to divorce, I found myself in a deeply miserable situation. During a heated argument about our impending divorce, my father unexpectedly visited. Witnessing the distress in our relationship, he offered me a place to live and encouraged me to leave my husband, taking my daughter with me. Having recently lost his wife and observed his daughter in an unhappy marriage, my father convinced me that persisting in such a difficult situation was futile. Feeling the weight of his concern, I yielded to my husband's request for a divorce. In return, my husband provided me with $3,000 in cash. With my father's support, I secured a 2-bedroom townhouse to live in with my daughter, starting anew. I anticipated the need to work hard to support my daughter, fearing judgment from society for being a divorced woman with a daughter. This concern was particularly heightened as my daughter entered adolescence. During this challenging period, my daughter expressed typical desires of her age, lamenting the perceived consequences of her parents' divorce. Despite the emotional hurt, I knew I couldn't dwell on them forever, determined to provide for my daughter. I embarked on the journey of seeking stable employment. However, being an older divorced woman with a child made securing a job challenging. Undeterred, I took on multiple part-time and nighttime jobs, even engaging in freelance work at home whenever possible. As time passed, my daughter advanced to her senior year of high school. Despite financial constraints, she excelled academically, finding her own way to thrive. Motivated by my desire to ensure her future, I secured a job at a 24-hour restaurant, working 12-hour shifts. 2/3 of my earnings were diligently saved for her college tuition. Despite facing judgment and gossip, especially from some married men who viewed me as an easy target, I persevered for the sake of my daughter. The sacrifices were numerous, but my goal was to provide her with opportunities I never had. As she approached adulthood, I hoped she would understand the struggles I faced in raising her and making a living. Reflecting on these challenges, I realized that having a daughter made my situation both more arduous and meaningful. She became my anchor, giving me the strength to endure and persevere through life's challenges. I held on to the belief that, in the future, my grown daughter and I would share stories about the hardships we faced and take pride in our resilience. A year later, my daughter's outstanding performance in the SAT exams earned her admission to Harvard University, a moment of immense joy that made all the previous struggles worthwhile. As she embarked on her college journey, I felt a mix of pride and emptiness. Though I had managed to provide for her education and housing, the absence of her daily presence at home left a void. We maintained close contact through phone calls, and during the initial months of her independence, our bond deepened. Her newfound affection and connection were a source of comfort, and I cherished our evolving relationship. Despite the challenges, my daughter graduated from college without financial setbacks, fulfilling a dream we had worked hard to achieve. Anticipating that we could live together again, I was surprised when she secured a job at a defense corporation and chose to live independently. To support her, I took a bank loan and contributed to the down payment for a condo near her workplace. While I aged and embraced a more unassuming appearance, my daughter thrived as a fashionable career woman. Witnessing her success brought immense happiness, reinforcing the idea that my sacrifices had borne fruit. I found contentment in her achievements, understanding the sentiment of people who say they forget hunger in moments of joy. Despite the financial support throughout her college years, the prospect of her wedding became a new financial responsibility. People questioned why I continued to struggle when my daughter was capable of self-sufficiency. However, I was determined to contribute to her wedding expenses to prevent any condescension from her future in-laws. The belief that sacrificing for her happiness would bring joy to both of us fueled my resilience. On the other hand, as my daughter dated, I noticed a growing distance between us. Initially hurt, I recognized that her adult life and relationships rightfully took precedence. I patiently waited for her to mature and open up to me, understanding that priorities shift during this phase of life. However, on her 27th birthday, I looked forward to celebrating with her. Yet she made it clear that she had plans with someone named Michael and dismissed any preparations. While she may have intended to convey that I needn't go to any trouble, I couldn't help but feel hurt. It was her birthday, a day that held immense significance for me as the day she was born, and her apparent indifference stung deeply. It was challenging to comprehend why my daughter considered spending money on her birthday a waste, given the tight budget. Despite her intelligence, her understanding of her own mother seemed distant. Despite my hurt feelings, I understood she was my only daughter, and I wanted to see her briefly on her birthday, even if it meant taking a day off work. On that day, I meticulously paid attention to my appearance before going to her workplace. However, what awaited me was an unexpected and emotionally charged encounter in the company lobby. I saw my ex-husband with his mistress, individuals I never wished to see again. Doubting how he found out and came there, I frantically called my daughter, only to be abruptly hung up on as she claimed to be busy with a meeting. Feeling dumbfounded, I turned around, only to hear my daughter happily calling her dad and embracing him with a bright smile. Her boyfriend seemed familiar with my ex-husband and his wife, adding to my fury. In that moment, I felt betrayed, as if the whole world conspired against me. Drained of meaning, I hastily left the scene. Reflecting on that day, I felt the desire to confront my daughter and ex-husband, but an overwhelming urge to escape prevailed. Despite my inner turmoil, I couldn't muster the courage to call my daughter. Unexpectedly, my daughter showed up at home one day, announcing her decision to get married and handing me an invitation card. The surprise turned into shock when I saw the names on the card. Although she was my daughter, I felt an intense urge to throw her out of the house. I questioned how she, my own daughter, could present such an invitation. I confronted her, expressing my hurt at being treated like a guest at her wedding, emphasizing my role as her mother. In response, my daughter apologized, stating she felt she had no choice. Despite her desire to marry Michael, she faced scrutiny from his parents over every detail about her. The situation left me grappling with complex emotions, torn between hurt and the desire to understand my daughter's perspective on her life-changing decision. The revelation from my daughter about her concerns regarding my divorced past and the challenges of being a single mother struck me deeply. She explained that revealing this truth could jeopardize her chances of marrying her boyfriend, as her potential in-laws might disapprove. In the face of this revelation, I couldn't help but express my frustration, reminding her of the sacrifices and struggles I endured to raise her, work at a restaurant, and fund her education. My daughter's response. However, her response stunned me. She dismissed the past, stating that her father and his new partner, the woman who played a role in breaking our family, had already met with her future in-laws. In her perspective, the present was what mattered most, and she prioritized her desire for a comfortable life over the difficulties we faced before. Feeling hurt and regretful, I spoke harshly to her for the first time in my life, expressing my disappointment in her attitude. In turn, she suggested that if I wanted to drop her from my life, I should repay her for the money I spent raising her. This exchange led to a heated argument, and she left my house in anger, proclaiming that we were now strangers. Devastated by the turn of events, I questioned the purpose of saving money for her wedding and felt a deep sadness when I looked at the wedding invitation she had left behind, with a different name printed where mine should have been. 3 years later, I received news that my father, who had been living independently to avoid burdening me, had fallen ill. Sadly, I learned about his condition only after his passing. The realization of being a poor daughter to him hit me hard. A few months later, I inherited a small condo where he had lived, a bittersweet reminder of the family ties and struggles that shaped my life. Upon realizing that I had money saved from my daughter's wedding in the savings account, I decided it was time to live for myself, even if it seemed somewhat late in life. I pondered the idea that in today's world, trusting only one child and sacrificing for them might not be the most fulfilling path. It was a realization that I should prioritize my own desires and needs before it became too late for me to enjoy life. As I contemplated this shift in perspective, a real estate broker and close friend from the restaurant where I worked suggested that I consider what I truly wanted to do. Despite societal expectations for women to sacrifice, I felt the desire to break free from that mold and live for myself. I harbored a feeling of regret and sorrow for the sacrifices I made over the years, and I yearned to pursue personal fulfillment. Inspired by my friend, I embarked on studying the real estate business and even delved into auction biddings. With some savings and money from selling my late father's condo, I seized the opportunity to take on a new challenge. In the surprising turn of events, I became a building owner overnight, residing in a prime location. 6 months later, after returning from a mountain climbing adventure, I found myself on the top floor of my building, now transformed into my home. Unexpectedly, someone knocked on my door, and I debated whether to pretend not to be home due to fatigue. However, curiosity prevailed, and I opened the door to find my pregnant daughter with a chubby-cheeked toddler in her arms. Tearful and distressed, she explained that she had been deceived by her husband, who turned violent and had affairs. Faced with impending childbirth and raising her young daughter, she sought refuge with me, despite my initial shock and the lingering hurt from our previous arguments. I couldn't turn my back on my daughter in need. She revealed that she had heard about my newfound success in real estate and wanted assistance. Despite the painful history between us, she pleaded for help, pointing out that she had a share in the money I had acquired from my wedding savings and inheritance. Caught between anger and compassion, I couldn't deny my daughter's plea for help. Despite her past actions, I recognized the vulnerability in her situation and knew that as a mother, I couldn't turn her away. The complexities of our relationship resurfaced, prompting me to grapple with the tangled emotions of love, disappointment, and the inevitability of family ties. I confronted her, saying, "I was the one who saved money for your education and your wedding, but you told me to get out of your life. Do I need to give you money now?" I only said that, but I didn't get any money back from you. It seems that in front of money, there is no use for the bond between a parent and a child. Now that you have money, you don't need a daughter, right? No matter what, I am still your daughter, so I have a right to your money too. I was once very proud of you, thinking that it was because of me that you were able to attend Harvard. But now I see that it was all in vain. I guess I was too busy making a living that I couldn't teach you to be a decent human being. I raised you as someone who is so selfish and can only think of yourself. I don't plan to give you 1 penny, so you can either go back to your husband or your wonderful father. You are too mean. Could you abandon your own daughter? Do you think other people would care for me at all? That wife already ran off with the money, and he has disappeared trying to look for her. If you abandon me, I'll become an orphan. Now I have a child and I'm pregnant, So how could you be so mean to me? Would you be happy if I died like that?" When she screamed at me, I couldn't put up with her any longer, so I took out all the money I had in my wallet and threw it at her. "Since you are acting so pathetic, I'll give you that. However, never come back to my house because I won't let you in." There's something that I learned in the meantime, just that your life is important. Now my life is important. You cannot put me in and out of your life at your whim. I coldly let my daughter and her child out of my house. Of course, I would not feel good about it since she was my daughter after all. However, I couldn't accept her because she still was as selfish as before, and I couldn't bury the past. However, I felt sorry for my little granddaughter, who was innocent and got kicked out together with her mom. After that, my daughter was too proud and never came to see me again. To be honest, I knew that she was such a daughter. So, has she repented for her past acts and begged me for forgiveness out of a quest? Pretending I was reluctant, but would have found ways to punish her wayward husband. But I was so disappointed that if she erased me from her life to marry her husband, she should have lived happily. Why did my husband and my daughter turn out that way, even though I lived a hard life? Now I see that the only person who is living a life the way I want to is only me alone. Thus, if anyone is living a life like I did on behalf of others, I want to say this one thing for sure. No matter how strong your relationship is with another person, be sure to take care of your life first. Even if everyone in this world betrays you, you will not betray yourself. In the end, happiness is not what you do for others, but what you do for yourself. I want to give that message through my story here. Even though it may seem like a life that's only felt half, I plan to try to fill that remaining half from now on for complete happiness. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope all goes well for you today, and good fortune will be with you. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscribing is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
"Mommy, wake up, wake up." My daughter shook me gently, her face full of worry. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I asked, rubbing my eyes as I woke up. "Mommy, I think you shouldn't be with Daddy anymore," she said urgently. I was wide awake in an instant, confused by her words. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to understand. Sarah explained that she thought it would be better if Dad and I split up. "Why would you say that?" I was shocked by her suggestion, but as she explained, I realized she had a point. My name is Emma Simpson, and I'm a 34-year-old mom who works full-time. I sell insurance for a big company. Balancing work and taking care of Sarah, especially since I have to drop her off and pick her up from daycare, is tough. I have to finish all my work between 9 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock p.m. I've been doing this job since before I got married, and now more than 10 years have flown by. I've worked hard and earned my place in the company. Even though I have a family, I can't afford to slack off at work. Why do I work so hard? It's for my daughter, Sarah. She just turned 5, and she's such a bright kid. Sometimes I'm amazed by how mature she is for her age. My husband and I want to give Sarah all kinds of experiences and lessons, but in today's world, everything costs money. So for Sarah's future, I need to work hard to earn as much as I can. I push myself every day just in case something unexpected happens. Some people might say, "You don't need to work so hard. Doesn't your husband earn enough?" Well, yes, he does work. But here's the thing. My husband's job isn't very stable. He works for a company that hasn't been doing well lately, so his salary keeps getting smaller. Right now, it's only about a third of what I make. It's hard to rely on him for money. The other night, after Sarah went to bed, my husband came to me nervously. "Emma, can I borrow some money?" he asked. "What for?" "I haven't even got this month's paycheck yet," I replied. "I promise I'll pay it all back next month. I had a few drinking parties and some other expenses. I'm short on cash," Keek explained. "Wait, you spent your entire salary on yourself?" "I can't believe it," I said, surprised. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't say no. Lately this has been Keith's behavior. He always finds an excuse not to give me the agreed living expenses and even asks me for money. He usually says it's for drinking parties or to help his parents. I can't be sure if he's really spending money for those reasons, but I've stopped confronting him about it. It seems like he always relies on my money. What would he do if I didn't lend it to him? Remembering our past talks, Keith mentioned he finds it hard to save money and his bank account is almost empty. That means if he needs cash, he has to borrow it from somewhere, possibly getting into debt. With a 5-year-old daughter, I don't want her to grow up thinking her dad is bad with money, so I usually end up lending him money. Okay, how about $200? You're a lifesaver, Emma. I promise I'll pay you back everything next month, Keith said gratefully. You always say that, but you've never actually paid me back, have you? I replied, feeling frustrated. Well, I'm sorry. But this time, I'll definitely pay you back. And I'll stop going to drinking parties, Keith promised. You better think it through. Our priority is Sarah, I reminded him. I know, Keith said, sounding remorseful. I couldn't help but wonder if Keith truly understood the seriousness of our situation. Doubting him made me feel awful, but sometimes it was hard not to. I let out a deep sigh, feeling conflicted. I support Keith so much not just because he's my husband, but because he's an amazing dad to Sarah. Every weekend he makes sure to spend quality time with her. One morning, Keith suggested, Emma, I'll take care of Sarah today. Why don't you go out and relax? But I have so much to do at home, I replied. Don't worry about it. We can order lunch and tidy up together. I'll handle what I can, Keith insisted. Really? Sarah, still half asleep, smiled. Can you wait, Sarah? It'll be just you and Daddy playing, I said to her. Rubbing her eyes, Sarah hugged me and said, I'm fine with that, Mommy. Okay then, maybe I'll go shopping for a bit, I said, feeling a bit relieved. Yay. But don't forget to get me something too, Sarah exclaimed. I'll bring back your favorite bread, I promised. Yay, thank you, Mommy. Sarah cheered, her face lighting up with joy. Sarah, at just 5 years old, behaves surprisingly well. Of course, I wouldn't leave her alone at home. Even though I felt a bit nervous about leaving her with my husband, just in case, I left a note in Sarah's bag with my phone number on it. I always remind her, call me if anything happens. Everything will be okay. That day, I went shopping by myself for the first time in a while. But even after browsing the department store, I couldn't find anything I really wanted. So instead of buying something for myself, I picked out some clothes I thought Sarah would like and got her favorite chocolate croissant. I'm home, I announced as I opened the door. Sarah came running to me with a big smile. Mommy, welcome back. How was shopping? Did you have fun? I'm back, Sarah. It was nice to have some time to myself. Here's the surprise I got for you, I said, handing her the treats. Wow, a chocolate croissant and new clothes too. Can we have the croissant tomorrow morning? Wait, where's Daddy? Oh, Daddy's out on the balcony talking on the phone, I replied. On the phone? Who's he talking to? I wondered aloud. When I peeked out onto the balcony, I saw Sarah was right. My husband was happily chatting away while smoking. When I tapped on the window, he looked surprised and quickly ended the call, asking, You're back already? Yeah, I'm back. But who were you talking to? I asked. Oh, it was just work stuff, he replied casually. You left Sarah alone inside the house? I asked, feeling a bit frustrated. I'm sorry it came up suddenly. Sorry, Sarah, he apologized, looking sheepish. Sarah looked disappointed and said, Mommy, did you know? Daddy said he'd play with me, but he was on the phone a lot today. Really? Yeah, you're right. He promised we'd read a book together. I confirmed, feeling a bit let down. When I looked at my husband, he seemed regretful. That night, we had dinner together as usual, and I bathed Sarah. Because I felt bad for leaving her alone during the day, I tried to spend extra time with her. After Sarah fell asleep, I had a serious talk with my husband. Keith, are you really that busy? It feels like you're always on work calls, even on weekends. Yeah, the workload has been crazy, and I've had to do a lot of overtime. So when I've been coming home late lately, it's because of work, not going out drinking. Okay, it's because of work, but when you're on the phone, can you make sure to spend time with Sarah too? Work is important, but so is our family, I reminded him. Okay, but Sarah looked really lonely. From now on, when I go out, I'll take Sarah with me. And if you're going to be busy with work, just let me know in advance, Keith promised. Got it. I'm going to bed now, Keith said, bidding good night before heading to the bedroom with his phone. For the past 6 months, Sarah and I had been sleeping in the same bed more often, while Keith slept alone in the bedroom. Although I enjoyed sleeping next to Sarah, I couldn't deny that our time together as a couple had decreased. Keith didn't seem bothered by it, but as a woman, I sometimes felt a twinge of loneliness. Then, one night, "Mommy, wake up." Sarah's sudden voice jolted me awake. I glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m. in the quiet darkness. Keith must be asleep in the other room. I sat up and asked Sarah what was wrong. "Mommy, I have a request," Sarah said seriously. "A request? What is it?" "I want you to break up with Daddy." "What?" Sarah's words snapped me out of my drowsiness instantly. "What did you just say?" "Mommy, I want you to break up with Daddy." Sarah had indeed said those words. Trying to mask my shock, I looked into her eyes. "Why would you say something like that?" "Because, Mommy, if things stay like this, you're in danger." "Danger? What do you mean? I'm okay." "But Dad, he wants to hurt you." "What happened, Sarah?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she cried, but she seemed to calm down a bit when I gently stroked her back. "Earlier, when I got up to use the bathroom, I heard Dad talking on the phone in his room." "Really? What was he talking about?" I asked, feeling a mix of worry and confusion. "He said it would be good if something happened to you, Emma, so we could get the insurance money." "What's insurance money?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew. They were talking about hurting me on purpose. Why, Keith? Why would he say that? "Also, Daddy said, I love you on the phone, but not to you." "It was to someone else," Sarah added. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll make sure everything's okay," I reassured her, though tears were welling up in my eyes again. My daughter, so young yet so perceptive. She must have sensed something was wrong. Children are often very aware of their parents' feelings and actions, even at a young age. Despite her tender years, Sarah must be worried about my safety. At that moment, tears of gratitude and anger mixed in my eyes. Gratitude towards Sarah for her bravery and concern, and anger and sadness towards Keith for his actions. My little girl trying so hard to protect me. Now that she's spoken up, it's time for me to take action too. I have to do something about this situation myself. Looking at Sarah, I began to speak slowly. "Sarah, I need to talk about something very important. Can you listen carefully?" "I'm listening, Mommy. And if what you said earlier is true, then you can't stay with Daddy anymore, right?" "That's right. I'm considering leaving this house. What do you think, Sarah?" Sarah paused for a moment, thinking deeply, but then she looked at me with determination and replied, "I want to stay with you, Mommy. Are you sure about leaving?" "Yes, I'm sure. I can't be without you." "Thank you, Sarah. Let's go." "Okay." I instructed her to quietly and quickly gather her things. Sarah began to pack her backpack, being careful not to make any noise to alert her father. I hadn't realized how mature and responsible she had become. Touched by her growth, I too prepared to leave, leaving my wedding ring on the living room table. Together, we left the house. It was still dark outside when we arrived at my parents' house and rang the doorbell at 5:00 a.m. My mother, looking sleepy, answered the door. "Emma and Sarah too. What brings you here so early?" "I'm sorry for dropping in like this, Mom. Can we stay here for a while?" "Of course, dear. But what's going on?" "There's something you need to talk about." After my mother showed me to the living room, she put Sarah to bed in the adjacent room. Sarah looked exhausted and quickly drifted off to sleep. A comforting cup of tea sat on the table in front of me, courtesy of my mother. Taking a sip, I gathered my thoughts and began to speak. "It seems Keith is planning something involving me, possibly an accident," I said, the words heavy on my tongue. My parents were stunned into silence. My father, trying to maintain his composure, asked, "What do you mean? Why would Keith do such a thing?" Sarah overheard Keith talking on the phone. He told the person he loved her. "I suspect he's having an affair." "That's unbelievable." "An affair?" But Sarah only heard the call. "How can you be sure?" My father's disbelief was evident in his tone. "I brought Keith's tablet. If we look into it, things might become clearer," I said, pulling out the tablet from my bag. Since Keith wasn't likely using his phone to communicate with his lover, he must have been using this tablet instead. When I opened it, I found that it wasn't locked. As I cautiously scrolled through the screen, my suspicions were confirmed when I opened the email app. There were numerous exchanges with a woman I didn't recognize. This, my mother pointed at the screen, appears to be a detailed plan to cause an accident involving you. I quickly snapped photos of the emails as solid evidence and printed out the conversation for future reference. Just then, my cell phone rang from inside my bag. Glancing at the screen, I saw it was a call from Keith. With determination, I answered the call and switched to speaker mode. "Hello, what's up, Emma? Where are you?" I woke up and no one was in the house. "I'm worried," Keith's voice came through. "Is that all you have to say? Really? What do you mean?" "I'm worried about the two of you," I retorted, my voice trembling with anger. "How dare you say that? Are you planning to get me caught in an accident?" Keith's response was swift, his tone defensive. "What? Why would you say that?" Keith's voice over the phone sounded shaken. He must have been shocked to realize that I knew about the secret plan he had been hiding. He probably used to call his mistress while I was asleep. Now that he knew I was aware of everything, he must be completely confused. And he probably hasn't realized yet that I have a reliable ally in Sarah. "I heard it from Sarah. You planned to cause an accident so you could get insurance money," Sarah interjected. "That's not true, it can't be," Keith denied vehemently. "And what can't be true?" "Sarah told me about your conversations with your mistress. I know about your plan to harm me and claim the insurance money," I said firmly. "Why would she say that?" Keith's protest sounded feeble, confirming my suspicions about both the affair and the accident plan. Keith seemed at a loss for words, inadvertently admitting the truth. His guilt was undeniable. "I never thought you could stoop so low. I'll raise Sarah properly. Why don't you go live happily with your mistress? I never want anything to do with someone like you again. Remember this. I'll never forgive this betrayal." I couldn't help but raise my voice in anger as I spoke to Keith. Without waiting for his response, I hung up the phone. "It seems I woke up my daughter with my raised voice," I said, noticing Sarah standing in the doorway. "Mommy, are you okay?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. "Sorry, Sarah. Did I wake you up?" I asked, feeling guilty. "No, don't worry about it. What happened with Daddy?" Sarah's concern was evident in her voice. "It's okay now. You don't have to worry anymore," I reassured her. "Really? Are we safe? Can we always be together?" Sarah's eyes were filled with hope. I nodded and smiled at my daughter's bright eyes. Then I hugged Sarah tightly, comforting her. Soon after, I made the decision to divorce Keith. Through my lawyer, I successfully claimed a significant amount in child support. Although Keith's actions could have warranted police intervention, I didn't want to cause any more disruption for Sarah's sake. I completely cut ties with Keith and left the legal matters to my lawyer. I later heard that Keith was abandoned by both his parents and his mistress shortly afterward. Now he struggles to pay child support and settle property division. On the other hand, Sarah and I started a new life in a new house. Sarah adjusted well to her new nursery school and seemed to enjoy every day. While there may be challenges ahead for us, I believe that with Sarah by my side, we can overcome anything. She is my absolute partner, and together we can face whatever comes our way. Hello, my name is Charlotte, a 32-year-old woman sharing a recent transformative experience that helped me find peace after a difficult time with my husband and his family. This journey began a few months ago, and while things are starting to settle, I'm still processing the emotional aftermath. By telling my story, I hope to find some healing. Rewind to 4 years ago when I took a big step in my life. I married my boyfriend, Benjamin. We met through mutual friends and spent 3 wonderful years together before deciding to marry. Benjamin was charismatic, always the life of any gathering, caring, generous, and coming from an affluent background with a successful career. His kindness felt boundless, and he loved to surprise me with thoughtful gifts. Our bond grew deeper over our shared love of travel, and my friends were genuinely happy for us. One generous gesture stood out. For my college graduation, Benjamin surprised me with a brand new laptop. I felt both grateful and slightly uncomfortable as it highlighted the financial gap between us. "Benjamin, I'm just a student," I'd say, trying to broach the subject. "I can't keep up with this level of spending. Let's at least split some costs." But he would just smile, shrugging off my concerns, assuring me that it was normal for him to spoil me just as his friends did with their partners. Eventually, I accepted his gestures, though I always contributed however I could. Once I landed a good job after graduation, I was excited to reciprocate his generosity. We began splitting expenses more evenly, even discussing the idea of moving in together. One day, Benjamin suggested, "Why don't you move in with me? I inherited my grandfather's house, so there's no rent. We can share the other costs to keep things fair." Although I was a bit hesitant, he convinced me it would be best for both of us. With that, we started a new chapter together, balancing our finances in a way that reflected our different income levels. Then came the moment to meet Benjamin's family, who lived far from us. Because of his work commitments, I found myself hosting his family alone. Before their visit, Benjamin warned me they could be judgmental but didn't offer much detail, only advising me to smile and not to take any hurtful comments personally. Hoping for a pleasant encounter, I prepared for their arrival. But from the moment his parents and sister walked through the door, the atmosphere felt tense. Their disapproval became obvious, voiced openly. "So, you're the woman Benjamin's been seeing," his mother Susan remarked, casting a scrutinizing glance around. "I didn't expect you'd be living here. Do you pay rent?" Trying to maintain my composure, I explained, "The house is fully paid for by Benjamin, but we share all other expenses equally." Susan didn't seem satisfied. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can freeload," she retorted. "This is Benjamin's house, not yours. Remember that." Her words were cutting, and the conversation only became more uncomfortable. Benjamin's sister, Kelly, wasn't any warmer. She barely spoke to me, instead making pointed references to her marriage to a billionaire, perhaps to establish her perceived superiority. My attempts to connect with her were met with dismissive responses. Throughout their visit, Benjamin offered no support. In fact, he almost seemed to side with them. His parents criticized my spending habits, particularly my purchases of makeup and skincare, labeling them frivolous for someone with limited financial contribution. They seemed skeptical of my independence, and Benjamin had apparently fueled their perception, portraying me as a struggling student when we first met, as if to downplay my growth since then. It was a tough and eye-opening experience, one that made me question my relationship with Benjamin and the dynamics within his family. I had been dependent on Benjamin at the start of our relationship, but his portrayal of me felt exaggerated and misleading, almost as if he wanted to reinforce his family's negative opinions. While Benjamin had indeed supported me financially early on, we had since adjusted our finances to split costs equally. Yet in front of his family, he remained silent, almost complicit in their disapproval, making the entire experience deeply unsettling. When I tried to explain this to Benjamin, reminding him that I had always lived modestly and that any luxury items I owned were gifts from him, gifts I'd often advised against due to their extravagance, he brushed it off. He defended his lavish spending, saying it was part of his social status, as if his generosity was more about his image than about genuinely caring for me. After his family left, I confronted him about their harsh comments, but he dismissed my concerns. "Don't take it to heart, Charlotte," he said casually. "They didn't mean it seriously. You're overreacting." His refusal to acknowledge the problem left me feeling alone in my frustration. 6 months later, Benjamin proposed. Despite my reservations, I accepted, and we began planning an engagement party, agreeing to share the expenses equally. By then, I had started a small business, a project I found personally fulfilling, though Benjamin barely showed any interest. To him, it seemed insignificant, but to me, it represented independence and accomplishment. For the engagement party, I even covered the plane tickets for my extended family to make sure they could attend. But as soon as the celebration began, familiar criticisms emerged. "You shouldn't have spent so much on this party, Charlotte," Susan chided. "You're draining Benjamin's funds before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding." Their biting remarks cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful occasion. Feeling defensive, I spoke up. Yes, the party was lavish, but Benjamin and I agreed on this together. I paid my share, and he was just as enthusiastic about inviting so many guests. However, the criticisms didn't end there. Susan accused me of pushing Benjamin to spend beyond his means, while Kelly insinuated that she knew the kind of person I was and suggested I should have been more considerate. Overwhelmed, I stepped outside for air, only to overhear Kelly and her husband Mason mocking me. It felt as though my engagement party was unraveling, and Benjamin, oblivious to the cruelty of his family, did nothing to defend me. As I looked back at the scene, I realized how isolated I felt in my own celebration, wondering if Benjamin's silence and his family's judgment were signs of a larger issue I had overlooked. I found myself unemployed, which painted me as dependent rather than the self-sufficient woman I truly was. My mother, who had raised me single-handedly and understood the importance of financial independence, noticed my growing distress. With a protective concern, she urged me to reconsider the engagement, pointing to the relentless, harsh comments from Benjamin's family. After the engagement party, I decided to confront Benjamin about everything that had transpired. He dismissed my worries, insisting that his family was just joking and assuring me that financial issues were irrelevant because he loved me. Determined to take charge, I expressed my desire to contribute more significantly to our finances, including paying rent. Yet again, Benjamin brushed off my concerns as we moved forward with wedding plans. The mounting stress became almost unbearable. Benjamin's parents were relentless, criticizing every decision I made and accusing me of putting financial strain on their son. Their constant scrutiny made the engagement period a living nightmare. I explained that everyone, including my mother, was contributing to the wedding expenses, but Susan harshly accused me of exploiting Benjamin, labeling me a gold digger. Determined to defend myself, I approached Arthur, Benjamin's father. "Arthur, I'm not asking for any financial help. We can fully finance the wedding ourselves," I assured him. Despite my efforts to clarify, Kelly continued her sharp critiques, especially targeting the cost of my wedding dress and makeup. This entire experience underscored the stark differences between my values and Benjamin's family's expectations, forcing me to deeply reconsider our future together. Even though I carefully explained that my mother had covered many of the wedding expenses, the ceremony itself went smoothly. However, the reception was tainted by Susan and Arthur's relentless criticisms. They accused me of mismanaging their son's finances, completely disregarding my attempts to explain and defend my actions. Their unwavering determination to tarnish my reputation left me feeling powerless. Choosing peace over confrontation, I remained silent, refusing to let their negativity ruin our special day. A few months after the wedding, Benjamin received a significant promotion at work. Eager to celebrate his achievement, he planned a grand family dinner, and I was excited to make the occasion even more memorable. I volunteered to cover the entire event, expressing to Benjamin how proud I was and my desire to create a perfect evening for him. I explained that my business was thriving and that I had access to resources from a trust fund set up by my maternal grandfather. With great care and attention to detail, I organized the dinner, hoping to showcase my support and love. However, when Benjamin's family arrived, it was immediately clear they were displeased. Their disapproval was palpable, even as other guests reacted positively to the celebration. When it came time for speeches, Susan took the floor with a commanding presence. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate my son's promotion," she began. "He's worked hard and deserves every bit of his success. Unfortunately, it seems his luck doesn't extend to his choice in partners. It's quite sad that he has tied himself to someone who many would label a gold digger." Her words hung heavily in the air, instantly shifting the atmosphere from joyous to tense. The discomfort was unmistakable, and I could feel the eyes of the guests on me, judging and whispering. Despite the hurtful remarks, I maintained my composure, refusing to let their negativity overshadow the celebration. Benjamin, however, seemed oblivious to the animosity directed my way, further highlighting the disconnect between us and his family. As the evening progressed, the tension remained thick, making it clear that Benjamin's family's disapproval was far from over. Their harsh judgments and unfounded accusations continued to cast a shadow over what should have been a proud and happy moment. This relentless negativity forced me to confront the reality of my relationship with Benjamin and the challenges that lay ahead in navigating his family's hostility. The weight of Susan's words hit hard, yet I stayed composed, choosing silence over reaction as she continued. "Had he seen her true nature sooner," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "perhaps he wouldn't be burdened by her excessive lifestyle." She swept her gaze around the room, her message clear and cutting. "From the engagement to this dinner, It's obvious to everyone that his wife's extravagance has been nothing but a drain. Despite the sharpness of her critique, I remained calm, knowing that responding would only seem to validate her baseless claims. Then, with a smug satisfaction, Susan added, "Fortunately, we had the foresight to ensure Charlotte signed a prenuptial agreement. At least some of his assets are safeguarded." She sighed with mock relief. "It's a blessing that my son chose someone who can, at the very least, maintain the facade of a trophy wife." To my shock, Benjamin didn't refute her words. Instead, he nodded along. "I can barely spend on myself anymore," he complained, casting a regretful look my way. "Maybe I made a mistake." Hurt and stunned, I finally spoke. "Do you really think I'm a gold digger?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with hurt. Benjamin's response was biting. "Your lifestyle," he said coldly, "has been damaging to my bank account." Taking a deep breath, I decided to confront the accusation directly. "Since everyone here seems to believe that I'm a gold digger, maybe I should show you my bank balance," I declared. "I'm financially independent, and I don't need anyone's money." My statement was met with silence and disbelief, but I continued. Susan's gaze narrowed. "Did you steal my son's money?" she accused. To my shock, Benjamin added, "She must have taken it somehow." Holding my composure, I replied, "I don't need to steal from your son. I earn my own income, and I recently accessed a trust fund left by my grandfather. I was planning to use it to buy us a bigger house as a surprise, but under these circumstances, that seems unnecessary now." Benjamin looked at me, missing the tension entirely. "We could still get the house. It would be a wonderful gift." But I was resolute. "This is not happening," I said firmly. "Your family has insulted me for too long, and you've never once defended me. You've let these false assumptions continue." Benjamin brushed it off, claiming, "You're overreacting." But this time, I had finally reached my limit. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. "No, I'm not overreacting," I said, breaking the silence. "Everyone here knows exactly what your family has been saying about me." The room fell quiet, the weight of my words hanging heavily. This was the moment I made it clear. I could no longer tolerate the continuous lack of support and respect from Benjamin and his family. In that moment, surrounded by a sea of guests at our engagement party, the accumulated weight of years of disrespect finally broke me. I reached my breaking point, realizing that I couldn't endure the toxic environment that had tainted my relationship with Benjamin any longer. With unwavering clarity and determination, I turned to him and said, "I want a divorce." As Benjamin stumbled over words of protest, my mother stepped in firmly. "You've never defended my daughter," she stated, her voice calm and resolute. "It's time she leaves this toxic relationship for good." Without another word, we left the party, the murmur of shocked guests behind us. My decision was final. My mother's unwavering support closed this painful chapter in my life. That night, I returned to our shared home, packed my belongings, and ignored Benjamin's calls. I muted my phone and sought refuge at my mother's house. The very next day, I contacted my cousin, a lawyer, to begin the divorce proceedings. With a prenuptial agreement already in place, I knew it would be a straightforward process that would safeguard my assets. But things escalated when Benjamin and his family showed up at my mother's doorstep, demanding to speak with me. My mother, ever the pillar of strength, instructed them firmly to leave. Meanwhile, Benjamin's messages swung wildly between tearful apologies and unsettling threats, all of which I documented. If necessary, I was prepared to seek a restraining order. At one point, he even tried to confront me at my office, but security escorted him out after I alerted them. This incident only reinforced my resolve. I decided to step away not just from my relationship, but also from my job. My thriving business meant I no longer needed the position, and I was ready to prioritize peace and dignity over wealth. I handed in my resignation that day, determined to move forward. A week later, I served the divorce papers to Benjamin at his workplace, only to learn that he'd already heard about my resignation. Former colleagues informed me that he continued to reach out, sending flowers and gifts to my mother's house. But I remained resolute, fully committed to starting anew. With my mother's unwavering support, I found a new refuge, a quiet home in a neighboring state where I could start fresh, free from the shadows of my past. As I awaited the finalization of the divorce, the judge expedited the proceedings thanks to our clear prenuptial agreement. During the 6 months of our separation, I took time to regroup and mentally prepare for the next chapter. I settled comfortably into my new home, changed my phone number to break contact with Benjamin, and began to savor the tranquility and independence of my new life. Occasional updates trickled in, revealing that Benjamin's life was unraveling. He blamed his parents for our divorce and struggled professionally as colleagues distanced themselves and his superiors frowned upon the drama he brought to his workplace. His parents made things worse by spreading baseless rumors about me, but thankfully, these falsehoods didn't gain traction. In stark contrast, my life flourished. I threw myself into expanding my business and embraced the freedom and possibilities that came with my newfound autonomy. Slowly, I began to socialize again and cautiously stepped back into the dating scene. Though Benjamin's behavior had left scars, I remained optimistic, hopeful that I could heal and eventually find someone who would truly value and respect me. The hardship I endured because of Benjamin's actions had caused me immense pain, but it had also forged a newfound strength within me. Moving through and beyond these challenges propelled me into a future brimming with opportunities and personal growth. I now look forward to what lies ahead, confident in my resilience and clear on what I want in relationships and in life itself.